Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Had a Multi-Soulmate Quirk? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Ever since he was old enough to ask, Katsuki's been told that soulmates make you stronger. They make you stronger, they make you whole, and complete, and happy. Bakugo Katsuki is strong enough, thank you very much. And besides, there's that whole thing about how your soulmates can feel your pain and, even at the age of 4, Katsuki knows he would never wish his mother's wrath on anyone. So he's not particularly keen on finding his soulmates. He doesn't need them, nor does he want to put people through his own pain. That's not what a hero does, right? He gets his soul marks when he's 5. He comes into class and Deku goes absolutely crazy over them. He won't stop talking about how cool it is. It's not cool. It's stupid. Then, a few weeks later, Deku walks in, all proud of his soul marks. And he keeps talking about them and talking about them and talking about them, until finally Katsuki punches him on the shoulder and tells him to shut up. Deku's smile is a mile wide. Katsuki's angered yell is longer. 9 years later finds them at an uneasy truce. Kaken hates him, that is Zuko is pretty sure. If it were up to Kaken, they would never see each other again, that is Zuko is certain. But here's the problem. Listed among basic human needs is regular interaction with one's soulmates. After you meet a soulmate, spending time with them is pretty much a necessity until one of you dies, unless, of course, you're willing to risk crippling physical and mental illness. They tried that, at first, Izuku and Katsuki, which was all good until it landed both of them in the hospital with the flu. After that, Izuku thought maybe they'd go back to being friends. He thought maybe, just maybe, things would go back to how they were before the marks. Before the bright red and black marks adorning his back, before the faded gray ones Izuku doesn't like to talk about. He was wrong. They didn't go back to normal, but at least they stopped pretending the other doesn't exist. They walk to school together. Now, they help each other with homework and talk at lunch, but it's not what Izuku wants. To the outside world they look like friends. Best friends, even. Here's the catch. They don't hang out with each other after school or on weekends. They don't text. They don't pass notes during class or have complicated inside jokes. Their conversations aren't easy and fun and full of laughter. They're tense and formulaic, and they very often leave Izuku shaking and crying in his bedroom. They don't act like friends, and they definitely don't act like soulmates. They're still sick. Both of them. It's more bearable than it would be if they completely cut off contact. More like a painful but tolerable cold than anything. They talk to each other, they spend the bare minimum of time together, but it's not enough. It's not boyfriends, and it's not friends. It's not even acquaintances, it's nearly strangers. If it were up to Izuku, it wouldn't be like this. If it were up to him, they would be holding hands on their walks to school and getting ice cream together on the way home. They would talk about their dreams of becoming heroes, and they would apply to UA together. They used to say they would become the #1 hero duo. For once, Kaken isn't walking home with him after getting stuck in detention for reasons he refused to share with Izuku. Today, it seems, was the worst day for Kaken to get detention. There's sludge filling Izuku's mouth and nostrils. His throat burns with it. His vision blurs with tears and hysteria. In life or death situations, more than just a soulmate's emotions can make it through the mark. Izuku hopes Kaken's mark is screaming at him. Katsuki's stuck in detention after punching a kid in the face for calling Deku names that not even Katsuki would repeat, at least, not when they're about Deku. He's slumped over a blank paper that he's supposed to be writing an apology letter on. Like hell. If anyone needs to be writing an apology letter, it should be that kid. The little a-hole should be FNG sorry for what he said about Katsuki's soulmate. Katsuki huffs and tosses his pencil across the room. It hits the kid right in the head. He's enjoying the kid's disgruntled look as he wakes up, bleary-eyed, from his nap, when suddenly Katsuki is doubling over, gasping for breath as his mark screams with pain and terror. Katsuki jumps out of his chair, barely hearing as it clatters time the floor behind him, and dashes out of the room. The teacher doesn't bother to call after him. He doesn't know where he's going. He only knows that his mark is screaming at him, tugging him around corners and through people, and he realizes suddenly that this is the way home. He skids to a halt for half a second as he reaches the mouth of the tunnel. There's Deku, clawing at some sort of sentient sludge as it fills his mouth and nostrils, and Katsuki yells and charges forward. He wakes up a few minutes later. Young man, young man. Katsuki opens his bleary eyes and winces at the diluted sunlight of the tunnel. Slowly, he pushes his upper body up and comes face to face with All Might. Well, not face to face. More like face to back. All Might is hunched over Deku, trying to wake him up. There's a few more moments of All Might trying to rouse Deku from sleep, until finally Deku's eyes open. He takes just a few seconds to process the situation before scrambling up. All Might. All Might stand with his trademark grin and turns to Katsuki, likely to try and wake him, and finds Katsuki standing and staring at him with wide eyes. Well, if the two of you are all right and okay, All Might booms, shaking a Coke bottle filled with what must have been that villain. I must be off. Deku darts over to snatch his notebook off the ground, holding it out to the man who is already making to leave. Wait, All Might. Could you dash? He cuts himself off, staring down at his notebook in awe. Katsuki has broken out of his stupor and walked over, and he peers over Deku's shoulder. There on the page is All Might's signature. I already signed it, my boy. All Might says. Wait, All Might dash. And Katsuki hisses, grabbing Deku by the back of his shirt. Deku, he needs to go. They watch as All Might flies off. Deku looks almost stricken, and it pains Katsuki in a way he's less than willing to admit. I needed to ask him a question, Deku whispers. He's effing All Might, Katsuki huffs. He's got more important shit to do. Deku runs. Katsuki doesn't run after him. Izuku finds himself in some convenience store, staring blankly at a shelf of candy bars. Twix are Kaken's favorite. Should he get him some? As an apology? Dunno. That would be dumb, wouldn't it? Izuku stares at the Twix some more. Then he grabs some off the shelf harshly, knocking down quite a few. The store clerk glares at him and he winces before bending down to pick them up and put them back on the shelf. Then he grabs himself a couple Butterfingers and trudges over to the counter. The store clerk is very passive-aggressive in how he rings Izuku up, or at least Izuku thinks so, but he says nothing about it and leaves the store, pockets filled with candy bars. There's an explosion in the distance. At first, Izuku is too busy sullenly eating a Butterfinger to notice. Then there's a second, and his head snaps up. Maybe a good hero fight is what he needs to cheer up. Izuku speedwalks his way over to around where he thinks the explosions came from, and at first all he sees is a big crowd of people. Then Izuku's palms heat with phantom explosions and he drops his half-eaten Butterfinger and starts to run, pushing through the crowds of onlookers until he can see the villain, the sludge villain that attacked him earlier. And there, in its disgusting grip, is Kaken. Izuku's legs just move on their own. It's a blur, and Izuku doesn't snap back out of it until quite a few minutes after All Might arrived and Kaken was saved. There's some hero berating him for fighting Quirkless, and another praising Kaken for being brave, and All Might has disappeared. Izuku turns away from the hero without responding to a thing he said, and out of the corner of his eye he sees Kaken do the same. Izuku starts to walk towards the main street, and Kaken follows, and when they reach each other Izuku reaches out and takes Kaken's hand. Kaken lets him. They walk hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, silent. Why did you do that, Deku? Kaken asks eventually. Izuku startles, looking up at him hesitantly. You looked like you needed help. Kaken scoffs, shoulders hunching. I didn't need any FNG help. That's not what it looked like to me. Izuku takes care to let his tone shift into something more joking, to avoid Kaken's wrath. Kaken TSKS but says nothing more. How do you think the sludge villain got loose again? Izuku asks, and Kaken shrugs. How the hell would I know? It fell out of my pocket, I'm afraid. Izuku never thought he'd meet All Might once, much less twice in one day. But there's the #1 hero in all his glory, standing with his hands on his hips in the middle of Izuku and Kaken Street. Then he coughs and becomes someone else. By the time All Might is done talking, Izuku and Kaken are in what can only be described as shock. So you're telling me, Kaken trails off, staring at the ground with furrowed eyebrows. You're telling me that you can pass on your quirk? And you're passing it on to Deku? Izuku, for his part, is sobbing. Big alligator tears, enough of them that he could probably drown a man as he clings to Kaken's side. He can't even see his idol through them. How embarrassing. Yes. All Might says, and he sounds a little nervous about it. I believe young Midoriya here has all the makings of a true hero. Izuku swallows. I'm quirkless, All Might, he says, just to get it out there, just to make sure All Might understands that even if he is given this quirk, this amazing, wonderful, beautiful quirk, he is still genetically worthless. Something on All Might's expression flickers. Izuku can't tell what it is, but he prepares himself for the worst, anyways. But when All Might speaks, he doesn't crush Izuku's dream. Instead, he says, "That is all the more reason, my boy." Kaken and Deku used to say they'd be the #1 hero duo. As they stare at each other with identical looks of shock, Deku thinks they just might. Shinso Hitoshi doesn't have a birthday. His mother gave him up when he was a few months old. He was left on a random doorstep, his name written in permanent marker on his forehead, and CPS was called pretty much immediately. He's told that it's most likely he wasn't born in a hospital. There's no records of a Shinso Hitoshi being born around the time he must have been, so he must not have a birth certificate. Legally, Shinso Hitoshi's existence came out of nowhere. And he doesn't have a birthday. Typically, he celebrates on the anniversary of the day his soul marks came in. Whether or not anyone else celebrates depends on the foster house he's stuck in that year. This year's home definitely isn't one of Hitoshi's favorites. He thinks that as he stares at his 11-year-old foster sister, Mimiko, who is currently ripping his English essay into shreds. Hitoshi would have stopped her, but by the time he stumbled upon her heinous act she'd already ripped it into fourths, and at this point he figures he ought to just let her have her fun. He would be scolding her, at the very least, if it wasn't for the fact that this is one of the homes he's not allowed to talk in. When Mimiko is finished, she stares up at him with innocent eyes and a devilish grin. He scowls and pushes past her to his bedroom. There's no door on it, because his foster parents are scared he's going to get up to villainous activities, so Mimiko follows him. She stands right in the doorway, staring at him, until he throws a pillow at her and she dashes away. He can already hear her claims that he attacked her in his head, and now he just has to wait for his foster parents to show up and scream at him for a good 20 minutes. Hitoshi thinks bitterly, people wish they lived like me. Hitoshi flops onto his bed and snatches a folder out of his backpack. Inside is a form for applying to take the entrance exam for UA's general education course. He grabs a pen and fills it out. Underneath is a form for the hero course. He stares at it. Does he really want to do this? Is it worth it? Does he really think he'll ever have any chance of getting into the hero course? Does he really think he even has a chance at getting into UA? Hitoshi bites his lip as he reads through the forms for the umpteenth time. Does he really think? But what the hell? He grabs a pen. Can't hurt, can it? Maybe he'll find a soulmate at UA. He laughs at the thought. It's more likely that his soulmates will be like everyone else, scared off by his quirk. By his villainous quirk. He almost feels bad for his soulmates. The universe is playing a cruel joke on them, sticking them with him. He pities them. He signs his name at the bottom of the form. Denki had a big breakfast today. He only ate like 3 bites of it. His moms had tried to get them to eat more, but he's so nervous he's going to puke. Today's the day of his goddamn hero exam. He's going to do well on the practical, he thinks, but the written exam will be the death of him. Mom and Mama left him at the UA gates with 2 kisses on the cheek. He stands in front of it now, twisting the straps on his backpack nervously. Oh God. What was he thinking? There's no way he'll pass the written exam. No way. Nervous. A girl with solid pink skin and cute little horns on the top of her head appears at his side. Her grin is bright and infectious, and it makes the corners of Denki's lips quirk up too. Yeah, Denki says, I think I'm about to bomb the written exam. The girl chuckles. Yeah, me too, but I think I'll do well on the practical. She gasps suddenly. I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm Ishido Mina. Kaminari Denki. She tilts her head, and he doesn't understand how she seems so confident. Do you want to head in together, Kaminari? Yeah, sure, Denki says, trying to match her grin. She bumps his shoulder as she starts forward for the gate, and they both go still. She looks over to him, black and yellow eyes wide, and he looks back at her with much the same expression. Oh, she whispers. He nods. Oh, do you want to put your number in my phone, soulmate? With the confidence that comes in knowing his soulmate is across the room, Denki gets an 85 on the written exam. Present Mike does the introduction to the practical, and Denki is almost too busy vibrating in excitement to hear him. He just barely hangs on to what's coming out of Mick's mouth, but he manages to get enough to understand the premise of the exam. At one point, a loud boy with glasses stands and shouts at a green-haired boy in the back for talking. An explosive boy with blonde hair stands and starts to scream at the glasses boy, but the green-haired boy quickly pulls him back down. Denki wonders if he'll be in their class, and what an interesting year it will be if he is. He's almost glad to find, though, that those three aren't in the same examination area as him. They seemed very intense, and Denki wasn't sure if he was totally ready to deal with that. He chats idly with Mina as he waits for the exam to start. She has a boyfriend, apparently, who's also applying for the hero course, however his exam is tomorrow. UA's application rate rises every year, so for the last few years they've had to split students into different exam days. The exam starts, and things start to blur. He puts a hand to a robot and short-circuits it, 10 points. 20. 30. There's a scream off to his right and he startles. He turns and starts to run, skidding to a stop when he reaches the source of the scream, a purple-haired boy laying on the floor in a less busy part of the fake city. He's clutching at his ankle and groaning in pain. Hey! Denki gasps, crouching down next to him. What happened? The boy sneers. Some kid pushed me over when I was running to a robot. If he gets in the hero course instead of me, I'm suing. I didn't even get to nab 1 point. Denki laughs. He feels bad for the boy, really, but the boy is funny despite being so deadpan. Here, let me help you up, he says, standing back up and holding it out a hand. The boy takes it. Whoa, that's 2 in 1 thing a day, Denki breathes. The boy stares back at him. I'm so sorry. Sorry? Denki asks, incredulous, before coming back to his sense and rushing to wrap an arm around the boy's shoulders. Come on, I'll take you to recovery, girl. I'm sorry you got stuck with me, the boy says, and that explains nothing. Stuck with you? Denki asks, still confused. We were put together for a reason, you know. I'm Kaminari Denki, by the way. Shinso Hitoshi, the boy, Hitoshi, sighs. And, my quirk, it's a villain's, Denki. Brainwashing. Denki blinks at him. It's not a villain's quirk. It's just a quirk, you're the one who decides whether or not it's a villain's. Hitoshi doesn't quite look like he believes Denki, but they've reached recovery girl, so Denki lets him go and then runs back to try and get some more points. It's not until hours after the exam that he realizes he never got Hitoshi's number. The mark on Shudo's back burns, and he wonders what the hell his brother is getting up to this time. It reeks of anger and fear, and his arms are alight with invisible flames, and Shudo can only imagine the bullshit Tuya is getting up to. No one else at this awful party can feel it, though, not even his family, and Shudo is left to bear it in silence. He almost wants to shove Momo's hand off his upper arm, what with the fear that she'll be burned. But he keeps his cool. Shudo, she says quietly, are you all right? Maybe he didn't keep his cool well enough. He turns so that he can see her properly, she's on his left side, and says, what do you mean? She leans in a little closer to him. Some random pro behind them coos. He kind of wants to she's his soulmate, sure, but that's no one's business but theirs. Is it your brother? He takes a sharp breath, and he turns back to his original position so that his bad eye is towards her again. Don't. Shudo dash. Don't, Momo. He can feel his soulmate stare on the side of his head and he dutifully ignores it, keeping his posture straight. Father is lurking around, he's sure, and he can't afford to appear as though he's having an argument with his soulmate. He shivers to think of the inevitable magazine covers. Momo sighs. I'm going to go find Tenya, okay? Shudo shrugs, and Momo detaches. When her hand leaves his arm, he relaxes. He really was scared she would get burnt. Are you Todoroki Shudo? Shudo can't handle talking to a pro right now. Or to anyone, except maybe Momo. He sneers at thin air, cools his face into neutrality and turns. Hi there, Hawks says, smiling. I'm Hawks. Yeah, I know, Shudo says. Father complains about him a lot. Hawks laughs, but Shudo doesn't think it was funny. You can call me Takami, he says, and Shudo doesn't trust this. What's the ulterior motive here? I read up on your brother, Hawks says, a bit more serious. Shudo's upper lip twists involuntarily. That's the whole point of this stupid FNG ball. It's in remembrance of Tuya's disappearance. Of the failure, the disappointment. It's all to keep up appearances. Father doesn't give a shit about Tuya. All he cares about is knowing whether Tuya is still out there, whether Tuya is able to tell people how he was raised. Shudo is sick and tired of hearing strangers give his brother empty compliments. Tuya was an a-hole. He was a JRK, and most people that knew him hated him. Very few saw through, and very few knew why he is the way he is. Tuya was always soft with Shudo, and Fuyumi, and sometimes Natsuo. He told pretty much everyone else to F off, but these randos come together annually to talk a bunch of bullshit about a boy they never knew. Tuya would hate it, if he knew. He probably does know, actually. Shudo wouldn't be surprised if he showed up for the first time in years just to burn this stupid party to the ground. Have you? Shudo asks. Hawks, or Takami, whatever, most likely detects the coldness in Shudo's tone, and he raises one hand as though in surrender. Yeah, Takami says, I heard he was kind of an a-hole. Now that catches Shudo's attention. That's not exactly the kind of thing you say to his little brother. I imagine that's exactly the kind of thing you say to someone's little brother. Shudo tilts his head. You're not wrong. Where did you hear that anyway? There's something off about this, something Shudo can't quite discern, but this is the first time in years and years that anyone's ever talked about Tuya without making him sound like an angel. Oh, you know, Takami waves his hand as though he's swatting an imaginary fly. People who've met him. He's surprisingly popular. Shudo tenses. Is he? You should hear the things he gets up to. Well, Shudo breathes, I really would like to. Takami nods. He raises his glass to his lips before saying, we'll talk about it later, yeah? Shudo. Shudo turns, and Momo is standing behind him with a hand on Tenya's bicep. They watch Takami nervously. Tenya raises his hand to give a hesitant wave, and Takami returns it coolly. I've got to go, Shudo says, nodding back to his soulmates. He and Takami lock eyes, and in that moment, their respective bonds with Tuya connect them. Shudo can't say how exactly Takami and Tuya know each other, but it's enough to be aware that someone else knows Tuya is still alive. I'll see you later, Todoroki. And for once, Shudo thinks of someone other than his father when he hears his family name. The second he reaches his soulmates, Tenya grabs his arm tight. They're walking as a conjoined unit, now. It's them against annoying pro-heroes. Not that Tenya would ever call them annoying. It's them against something else, too, something unnameable, intangible. Momo leans over, practically pushing Tenya over. Were you just talking with Hawks? Shudo pretends that the water fountain across the ballroom is the most fascinating thing he's seen in his entire life. Shudo! Momo hisses, that was Hawks. You know that, right? Tenya's hand leaves his arm and comes to rest on Shudo's upper back, directly over his soul marks. I know, Shudo says. What were you talking about? Tenya asks. His eyes are across the room, and Shudo follows them to Ingenium, laughing jovially with present mic. Christ. The number of pros that comes to this party every year never fails to PSS him off. My brother, Shudo finally relents. Tenya's hand stills where it was rubbing soothing circles. Or rather, what was meant to be soothing. What did he say exactly? Shudo is back to staring at the water fountain, but he sees a flash of flame near it. Even at a party, Endeavor can't stop being a fire hazard. The flame is getting closer to them, which is somehow even more annoying than just existing in the same room. Shudo grimaces. I'll tell you later, he says quietly. When she spots Endeavor, Momo stills, then slowly lets go of Tenya's arm and takes his hand. Tenya mimics her with Shudo's hand the second he spots number 2. Shudo! Endeavor booms as he approaches. What did Hawk say to you? Do you not trust him, father? Shudo asks. He ignores how Endeavor hasn't looked at his own son's soulmates once, or how the way Endeavor's lips twist into a snarl spells nothing but bad news when they get home. Instead, he focuses on the satisfaction he gets from successfully frustrating his father. Endeavor tilts his head up with narrowed eyes, glaring at Shudo as though he could set him on fire right here and now. Well, actually, he could, but it would send his reputation to the gutter. And his criminal record. Not even the number 2 hero can get away with that kind of thing. What? Endeavor repeats, more firm. Did Hawks tell you? His raised voice draws attention. Ingenium and present mix laughter has faded into quietly watching Endeavor. Shudo watches them for a second, over Endeavor's shoulder, and present Mike raises a glass as though he is sympathizing. Nothing of importance, Shudo says finally. Tell me, Shudo dash. What kind of thing do you think he told me? Endeavor takes a sharp intake of breath. There's a long moment of silence before Endeavor says, Your siblings were looking for you. I'll go find them. Alright, I'll see you at home, Shudo. Endeavor nods to the other 2, acknowledging them for the first time. Yaoyorozu. Ida. The relief coming off the 3 kids as he leaves is palpable. Do you want us to come with you? Momo asks, and Tenya nods in agreement. As much as my siblings love you, Shudo says, already detaching from his soulmates, you know how they get about Tuya. Okay, remember to see us before the end of the night. Tenya says, swiping his hands in that sort of cute way he tends to, we're not going to be able to see each other again until the exams. Alright. Exams are in about a month and a half, but Momo has some family trip to Germany, and Tenya is visiting his grandparents. That SCKS. For Shudo at least. Shudo leaves them with 2 kisses on the head, something that's rare for him, especially in public, but DMN he's having a night and a half. When he finds his siblings, huddled in the corner of the ballroom, he's greeted by an unprompted bear hug from a teary-eyed Fuyumi. There, he says awkwardly, patting her back. Over her shoulder, he spots Natsuo glaring down at a glass of champagne as though it personally offended him. The mark on Shudo's back still burns. So do his arms. There's blood in his throat. Tuya's going out of his way to put himself in danger today, isn't he? A whole brother. Dabi even loves his job, and that's for one reason. That being, he can legally burn terrible people. Not so much kill them, but he can burn them, and that's enough for him. Like just now, the building he's standing in front of was home to a human trafficker. Now, it's home to a singed human trafficker and being raided by the police. Not to mention, underground heroes may not be as well off as other pros, but they still get paid a pretty penny. Speaking of underground heroes, you're going to end up with cancer. There's Aizawa, nagging as always. Dabi takes a long, spiteful drag of his cigarette before looking his teacher's way. Aizawa wrinkles his nose as Dabi exhales a long trail of gray. I've had plenty of smoke in my lungs, Dabi says. I can handle a little bit more. Aizawa knocks him on the head, but Dabi is so used to it that he barely even notices. You know it's got more than just smoke, his teacher sighs. For a few minutes, Shudo's lungs burn. He rolls his eyes. Smoking again? Really, Tuya? You've made it through an entire pack today. We get it, you're sad. Geez. I know, Dabi says, but brings the cigarette back up to his lips. Aizawa knocks it out of his hand before he can inhale, and stomps it into the pavement. Rude. I paid for that, you know. The look Aizawa gives him is somewhere between exasperated, worried, and fond, and it still makes Dabi cringe despite how familiar it is. It's been Aizawa's go to look for him since his first year at UA. Problem child, Aizawa starts, and already Dabi is rolling his eyes. If you die, I'm going to pull you back from the grave and kill you myself. Dabi pouts down at what used to be his cigarette. And why is that? You're worth more on the battlefield than in the ground, Aizawa says gruffly, but there's something soft in his eyes that makes Dabi want to puke. Or cry. Or both. Yeah. Hey, how are this year's examinees looking? Dabi asks, mostly to change the subject, seeing as how they're both emotionally constipated BS artists, but also because of the exam, as you know, hasn't started yet, Aizawa says, but we've got an interesting batch of wannabes applying this year. For instance, and at this, Aizawa's tone shifts into something Dabi despises, something careful. Endeavor's youngest son, Todoroki Shudo, got in on recommendation. That's what Dabi wanted to hear. How do you think he's gonna do? I mean, Aizawa shrugs. Just because he's a top hero's kid doesn't mean he's automatically hot sheet. That was a dig. It was a dig, wasn't it? Dabi sticks out his tongue. Keep me updated, will you? Dabi hates this. He hates the way he and his teacher are so well versed in covertly talking about Dabi's family. He hates the fact that he has to hide his parentage, hates that he can't just report his father, because no one would ever believe the number 2 hero himself to be capable of the things he did. You ought to head home, kid. It's late. Aizawa bumps his shoulder and shoots off on his capture gear. Dabi watches quietly as his teacher disappears and lights another cigarette for himself. He can already tell Kigo is home. For once, the life of the number 3 hero is a busy one. Before he opens the door, and not just because of the indescribable knowledge of Kigo that comes with his soul mark. There's a feather on the mat in front of the apartment door, and a matching spot of blood next to it. God damn it, Dabi is already saying before he's fully walked through the door, why are you bleeding? Kigo is sat on the couch, holding his bandaged shoulder. Got in a kerfuffle on the way home. Some girl. She was a kid though, probably homeless, so I let her go. Dabi drops his keys on the table and flops down next to his boyfriend. He closes his eyes and yawns. The bed is practically calling him from the other room, and all he wants is to curl up under the covers with Kigo and sleep for a week. You got it all fixed up? I'm good, baby, Hawk says. He leans over and plants a kiss on Dabi's head. How was work? Dabi hums. Alright. Talked with Aizawa for a bit. Missed that fucker. How was my bullshit party? Kigo scoffs. That's everything Dabi needs to know, that it was indescribably terrible. Kigo stays quiet for a moment. He wraps an arm around Dabi's shoulders and Dabi lets him, leaning closer so that he's just about laying on one of Kigo's wings. The bed, he could fall asleep right here. All anyone talked about was you, Kigo says, but it was all bullshit to keep up airs. Everyone thought you were dead, which tracks, so it's not like I could correct them. Good, Dabi mumbles. They can all go F themselves. Were Yaoyorozu Momo and Ida Tenya there? Dabi can still remember the day his brother met those two. At one of the 8 million annual hero ball, all 3 of them got stuck at the kids' table and, well, soulmates. Inseparable ever since. They were cute, probably still are, honestly. Yeah, Kigo says, they were adorable. Damn right they were. Get it, Shudo? The thought of them makes a fond smile appear on Dabi's face, which he will 100% end up denying when Kigo inevitably brings it up in the morning. He settles his head on Kigo's uninjured shoulder and almost passes out right there in the peaceful silence, until Kigo says, I talked to Shudo. He called you an a-hole. Dabi snaps up. What? Then, he's right. I talked to your brother, Kigo repeats, as though Dabi hadn't heard him the first time. He's doing well, I think. What did you tell him? Dabi's palms are smoking, and he does everything he can to push his flames down. You're not father, he reminds himself, but it does little to help. Nothing important. But Dabi knows his boyfriend well enough to know when he's lying. Kigo, he can't know where I am. Y'all share a mark, Kigo says. You both need dash. I know, Kigo, Dabi says. He takes a deep breath. His hands are clenched into fists on his knees, and he watches how Kigo's eyes track the smoke rising off them. But you know what will happen if Endeavor even thinks for a second that I'm a threat. Kigo's feathers quite literally ruffle. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, Dabi shouts, and suddenly he is standing. If Endeavor thinks that there is any chance his dirt will come to light dash. You didn't see him, love. You didn't see your brother. Kigo yells and Dabi cuts off. He wonders vaguely about the noise complaints that are practically guaranteed at this point. You didn't see the way he reacted when you were brought up. You didn't see how sick he is. I literally watched him slip off and take the same goddamn pills you do without each other. Both of you are sick. You're not just killing yourself, you're killing your brother. Dabi's hands are on fire. Now, great. I know you miss him, Kigo says, softer, and he misses you. Why can't you just talk to him? You know he's not going to spill your secret. Dabi turns on his heel and leaves. He can't tell if the blood in his throat is his, or just a phantom feeling of it from Shudo's side of the mark. The realization that Izuku and Kaken are both soulmates with the number one hero All Might ended in a lot of confused screaming on Kaken's part, and a lot of sobbing on Izuku's. Izuku still can't believe it, even months into his training. The idea that he, of all people, shares a mark with All Might, and will share a quirk with him, is just insane. He's been training for UA alongside Kaken and freaking All Might for months now. He had to clean the beach himself, of course, but there's still morning runs and workouts at the gym to think about. He and Kaken have been getting food after afternoon training sessions, and Izuku has a journal full of records on Kaken's quirk and Izuku's progress, and Kaken has been cheering him on while he cleans the beach, and it all makes them almost feel like friends. All Might doesn't even hand over one for all until the day of the exam. Kaken complains about it constantly. I can't go to UA without this stupid nerd. Just hand over the goddamned quirk. Izuku doesn't really feel any different afterwards, which is worrying, especially considering the fact that he and Kaken are currently standing in front of the UA gates. Let's go, nerd, Kaken huffs, pushing past him to cross the threshold to UA's campus. How can you act like it's no big deal? Izuku whines. Kaken doesn't answer and instead continues walking, letting Izuku fall behind to marvel at the sights. UA is imposing on its own, but behind it, fake cities and advanced training grounds stretch on for miles and miles, just begging Izuku to drop everything and spend days exploring them. The sky seems bluer, the grass greener, on this side of the gates. But maybe that's just his inner, it's not inner. It's completely outer, fanboy in him. Izuku, of course, is so busy marveling at all this that he trips on the first step to UA's doors. He almost falls flat on his face, but instead he floats. A squealing Uraraka Ochako releases a sobbing Izuku from her quirk, and they embrace, babbling almost incoherently. From halfway up the stairs, Katsuki is horrified to find a fond grin creep onto his face as Deku finds another stupid soulmate. The written exam was easy, and Katsuki's sure he'll ace the practical as well. Deku was placed in a different examination area, but that's fine. It's not like Katsuki needs a 24/7 knowledge of Deku's whereabouts. Or whatever. He's sort of glad to find that the soulmate girl, Uraraka she said her name was, and the glasses boy who yelled at Deku earlier are nowhere to be found. Not that they would hinder his performance, they would just be annoying as F-. The exam starts with Present Mike screaming, and Katsuki blasts his way forward. Good, he's already in the front of the pack. The euphoria that comes with getting to set his quirk loose almost distracts him from the giant robot coming his way. But with a few well-placed explosions, the robot goes down and he's got his first 3 points in the bag. 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 15, 17, 60 points in. They release the 0-pointer. Most examinees start to run, which tracks, because this thing is FNG gigantic and worth absolutely nothing. Katsuki turns away from it and stretches his arms back. He activates an explosion, and his arm shatters into pieces. Or at least, that's what it feels like it does. He yells incoherently and pulls his arm close to his chest, cradling it like a baby. His explosion backfired, which usually only happens when he tries to activate a large explosion on a low amount of sweat, and now his hand smells like smoke and caramel. Through the pain in his arm, he barely registers the way Deku's mark is throbbing. Sheet, Deku, he hisses through grit teeth. What the hell are you doing? Get out of the way, man. Katsuki can't do anything to stop it when someone wraps their arms around him and drags him, with surprising strength, out of the 0-pointer's path. He barely even starts to react, too distracted by the pain in his arm, until he's already being let go, screaming and indignant, "What the F-? His savior detaches hastily, revealing a boy with bright red hair and eyes to match. The eyes are especially noticeable, as they're currently the size of dinner plates while the boy stares at Katsuki with his mouth agape. The pain in his arm is finally starting to die down. Hopefully, that means Deku got his butt to Recovery Girl. The hell are you staring at? You, the boy breathes, like they're in some kind of cheesy romance movie, before shaking his head and continuing, didn't you feel it? Katsuki rolls his eyes. The zero-pointer continues to plow a path of destruction past them. I couldn't feel much of anything. Dumbass soulmate just broke his FANG arm. The boy grins, revealing bright white, dangerously sharp teeth like a shark's. We're soulmates? Sheet. Not another one. So. Katsuki growls. So, the boy says, drawing out the vowel, and he's already so endearing that it's scaring Katsuki. We're like built-in best friends, dude. Katsuki scoffs. Whatever. I need to go to Recovery Girl, he says, gesturing to his still slightly sore arm. The boy startles. Oh, come on, let's get you out of here. He goes to wrap an arm around Katsuki's shoulders. Katsuki growls and uses his good arm to slap him away, letting his palms spark a bit as he does so. I can walk by my DMN self, he says. All right, the boy says, raising his arms in surrender. Let's go. Kirishima Idru, by the way. Katsuki grunts his name in response, and begins to trudge his way to the gate. When they finally make it, and Katsuki's arm has pretty much gone back to normal, he makes a beeline for Recovery Girl. He swears to God he doesn't care whether or not Kirishima is following him, and he 100% does not turn around once to check. Nope. Diamond Deku should be with Recovery Girl. He scans the crowd for Green. Green, come on. The sat solemnly on the ground as Recovery Girl helps other nearby students, none with injuries quite so bad as the nerds, of course, is there. He's quietly nibbling on a pack of gummies, and Katsuki's heart almost drops when he notices tears running down Deku's face. He pulls it back up quickly though, with Deku, tears can mean just about anything. Deku! Katsuki shouts and starts to run. Deku startles and his gummies go flying. He makes no effort to pick them up though, because the second he realizes it's Katsuki calling for him, he does a classic Deku move. He drops everything and does whatever he can to hide his face, as if he doesn't realize he literally has bright green hair that could be spotted from a mile away. Deku, Katsuki repeats, plopping down next to him on the steps. How'd it go? Kirishima takes a seat next to him and pretends not to care. He also pretends not to notice when Deku shoots Kirishima a questioning look through the arms covering his face. Deku says something, but it's so muffled by his sobs and his arms and the fact that he's got his face shoved into his knees that it's completely inaudible. What was that, nerd? He repeats himself, and Katsuki still can't hear him. At least he knows it's not the fault of his own ears, for once. Katsuki sighs. He nudges Deku slightly on the shoulder. Come on, Deku. Deku raises his head up reluctantly, revealing still wet tear tracks. He sniffles. I'm so sorry, Kaken. Katsuki grimaces. For what? His heart is in his stomach. He tries to pull it back up again, to have faith in Deku. I didn't get any points, Deku sobs. His eyes are shut tight. I didn't get any points at all. We won't be able to go to UA together. Kaken, I'm so sorry. Bullshit. Katsuki shouts, a little harshly. He puts his hand on Deku's shoulders and shakes him as he talks. Then how the F, did you break your arm? I saved Ochako, Deku blubbers. I broke the zero-pointer and saved Ochako, but I didn't get any points, dim. They're already on first-name basis. Deku broke his arm because it was his first time using All Might's quirk. Probably, not even 10 months of training prepared him enough. Katsuki makes a mental note to address that later. Rescue points. Kirishima says. Katsuki turns around, ready to punch him, before he realizes what he's just said. What? Rescue points. Kirishima repeats. That's how Midnight got into UA. Deku's sobs cut off into wheezing breaths. Then he laughs, incredulous, and keeps laughing, until Katsuki is doubled over laughing too. He looks back at Kirishima and sees him staring at them with wide, slightly scared eyes, but for some reason he's also chuckling. Strange boy. Izuku. Soulmate girl. Yorika whatever. She's half jogging, half limping towards them. Deku stands and rushes over to her the second he spots her. They start a quiet conversation. Sheet, now Katsuki has to what? Talk to his new dumbass soulmate? So, Kirishima starts, and Katsuki groans, do you want to hang out or something, Kakin? What? Do you want to hang out or dash? No, I heard you, Katsuki says. He points an accusing finger at Kirishima. Only Deku calls me that, got it? Kirishima nods, same bright grin on his face. Okay, Katsuki. That's the best Katsuki's going to get, isn't it? No, I don't. Oh, come on. Kirishima bumps their shoulders together. Oh, I know. You and me and that Deku guy should all go hang out. I mean, I don't have any plans. And that girl he's talking to as well, if she wants. They're friends, right? That's the Ochako girl he said he saved? We could go get ice cream and dash. That's a great idea. Fing Deku. I'm not doing that, Katsuki says, determined. His determination wavers the second Deku looks at him with the eyes. Sheet, okay. Ice cream with the three cheeriest people on Earth? Horrible. Terrible. It was absolutely no fun at all and Katsuki never wants to do it again. But he goes home with a warmth in his chest and a smile on his face. This year, it might be good. Dabi and Kigo's paths very rarely cross while they're on the job. There's a few simple reasons for that, of course. Dabi is an obscure underground hero and Kigo is ranked third in the country. Dabi works night and Kigo works days. Dabi's jobs are more focused on the dirty things, the criminal underworld, while Kigo's are more public. So, yeah, it's very, very rare that they run into each other while working. But Dabi is not totally surprised by it this time. The hospital that Todoroki Rei is currently under the care of caught fire about 20 minutes ago, at roughly 4:30 in the morning. Both Kigo and Dabi, for obvious reasons, had rushed straight there the second they found out. Dabi to kill whoever was responsible for the fire, and Kigo to stop Dabi from killing an innocent nurse who left the stove on or something. Oh God, Kigo knows him so well. Dabi's not much help in this situation. Exhibit A, Fire Quirk. Exhibit B, inability to comfort people. And he really doesn't want Rei to spot him and start sheet, so he's hiding in the crowd and watching Kigo fly around and save people. You know, like a hero does. Dabi's great at his job. Dabi wonders vaguely why Kigo was awake so early, much less already out and about in the first place, but then, it's not really like he can ask. Here's the thing. When Dabi and Kigo fight, really fight, with screaming and tears and activated quirks and the whole shebang, they fight hard. Dabi may or may not have been staying at Aizawa and Mick's place for the last couple of days. He stares up at his winged boyfriend in a way that definitely doesn't make him look like a farmer girl from an old romance novel, longing for the handsome prince. Then he watches as Kigo pulls another victim of the fire out through the window and sets her gently down on the ground, her bright white hair forming a halo around her as it succumbs to gravity and sinks back down to her shoulders. She turns, and for a split second, Dabi is still Todoroki Tuya, watching his twin sister cry over the injuries their father had inflicted on him because he had no tears left to waste on himself. If Fuyumi is here, is Natsuo as well? Is Shudo? Thanks, but no thanks. Dabi turns and pushes his way out of the thick crowd of Hawks fans. Maybe he ought to head in early. When he makes it back to the apartment, he's careful to be as quiet as he possibly can. Mick's asleep, and with how busy that man is he needs all the hours he can get. It's nearly 2:30, and Aizawa said he was getting off a bit early today, what with the start of the school year, so he should be back any minute now. Dabi figures he ought to do something nice, for once in his life, and sets to work on making breakfast. He wishes he could visit his mom. He stares down at the sizzling egg in the pan. He watches it crackle and pop and bubble, watches as the edges of the whites start to brown. He wants to visit his mom. God, he misses her so much. He hasn't talked to his mom since his first day at UA. Since his journey to becoming a hero, or what Fing ever started. Shudo used to refuse to visit her. Maybe he still does. Tuya sup, Dabi supposes he can't blame him. She did blind him in one eye. But God, he can't imagine having the option to visit Todoroki Ray and keeping himself from it. And his siblings? He thinks Fuyumi is a schoolteacher now. She always loved little kids, or maybe she was just forced to. She's had to take care of Shudo and Natsuo herself, and Dabi too, let's be real, since the day Mom left. Does she like being a teacher? Does she even like kids? Is she dating anyone now? Does she want kids of her own, or were her siblings enough for her? Natsuo is in college. What is he studying? Dabi doesn't even know. He doesn't know what his own brother is studying. You're burning the bacon. Dabi realizes belatedly that he's been crying. Aizawa is next to him, turning off the burner and placing a gentle hand on Tuya's back. You were at the fire? Yeah, Dabi whispers. He closes his eyes to hold back the tears that still want to escape. Police said they don't think it was an accident. The tears. Dabi's eyes snap wide open. What? Aizawa nods. No sign of any fire hazards, no open flames, no stoves left on, no messed up wires, etc. etc. Usually, Dabi wouldn't be so paranoid, but what reason would anyone have to burn down a mental hospital except for the fact that family members of Endeavor were currently inside? The look on Aizawa's face is all Dabi needs to know that he agrees. If Izuku is being honest, the walk to the first day of school is sort of awkward. It's him, Kaken, Ochako, and Kirishima Aijuru he means. The redhead had insisted. You're the best friend of my new best friend, man. Izuku's still confused over the idea of Kaken actually thinking Izuku is his best friend. Kaken stays glued to his side and Ochako to the other. Izuku doesn't think those two get along, but he hopes they'll learn to. He doesn't know how he'll deal with it if two of his soulmates don't like each other. Aijuru, on the other hand, gets along with everyone. He's like a puppy or something. An awesome puppy. He's really cool. And he's got a really cool quirk. Ochako's quirk is so cool too. In the time between the exam and the first day, they've been testing the limits of Ochako's quirk a lot. Izuku really likes testing it against his mom's, who goes along with the experiments reluctantly, and comparing their respective strengths and weaknesses. Kaken and him have tried to work on Izuku's quirk a bit, but they can't figure out what to do without completely destroying Izuku's skeletal structure. When they finally reach Yue's gates, the four of them stop silently. Ochako grabs his hand. Okay, Izuku squeaks, let's go. Kaken, much more nervous now that he's going to school here and not just taking the exam, it seems, says, God, I guess so. Let's go, guys. Aijuru says and bounds forward, completely undeterred. That absolute mad lad, Ochako whispers. Izuku nods in horrified agreement. They follow after him with much less skip in their steps. The door to classroom 1A is gigantic, which doesn't help Izuku's nerves at all, thank you very much. He's the last of the four of them to enter the classroom. Kaken very quickly makes his place at the desk all the way at the end of the front row, Aijuru next to him. Izuku rushes to set up behind his soulmate. Ochako gets stuck a couple rows away, though. He and Aijuru strike up a conversation about their hopes and fears for the upcoming semester as they wait for class to start. Izuku, personally, is scared. Just scared. Terrified. Horrified. Anxious. Every synonym available. Aijuru is much more hopeful. Their conversation is interrupted by very familiar yelling. It's that boy who'd called Izuku out at the exam for mumbling to himself. Kaken had screamed back at him. The boy is scolding Kaken for putting his feet on the desk, and of course Kaken is completely ignoring him. Come on, Kaken, Izuku pleads, get your feet off the desk. It's rude. Kaken scoffs. Well, at least Izuku got a response. The boy completely forgets Kaken, turning to Izuku and saying a bit too loudly, I apologize for being so rude to you on the day of the exam. You saw the truth of the exam that I did not. Truly admirable. Izuku definitely just got whiplash. A what? The boy holds out a hand, oblivious to Izuku's confusion. Ida Tenya. Hesitantly, Izuku takes it. Midoriya. Izuku. Wait, oh geez. Another soulmate, huh? Izuku stares dumbly at Ida. Ida stares back. All of their respective brain cells have surrendered, it seems. They're still holding hands, which is kind of odd. Oi! Kaken shouts, "What are you doing?" Izuku makes an incoherent noise and gestures vaguely at Ida with his free hand. Kaken rolls his eyes. "Another one?" he asks, as though he didn't just meet Ida like a month ago. "If you just came here to make friends, you can leave now." Izuku's teacher is a caterpillar, apparently. He shakes his head. "Not important right now. Ida's important." "Hey," he whispers, struggling to keep his eyes away from the big yellow blob inching across the floor towards the podium. "I'll talk to you later, Ida, okay?" "Right," Ida says far too loudly. He returns to his seat, somehow completely missing the teacher's annoyed glare. Izuku didn't break his arm this time. His finger wasn't so lucky, though. Kaken probably hates him even more at this point, honestly. And their friendship was doing so well. Izuku doesn't make it out of the nurse's office until after class is over for the first day. He slinks into the class and winces when he spots his new teacher sat behind the desk. He was hoping to just get his stuff and get out. He hopes Aizawa doesn't try to start a conversation or anything. He keeps his head down as he makes his way across the classroom and to his bag. Aizawa looks up, and he can feel the man's eyes tracking him. "Ah geez. Midoriya," he says, and Izuku winces once again. It's never good when your teacher already knows your name on the first day of school. "Mr. Aizawa," Izuku says, staring down at his bag. He hopes he can get this thing packed with the broken arm. "I imagine you didn't feel it through the broken finger," Aizawa says casually. "We share a mark." What? Izuku sure as heck isn't staring at his notebooks anymore. He's staring straight at his teacher with dinner plate eyes. "Wha? You're being serious, Mr. Aizawa?" Aizawa sighs. "Why would I lie about something like this, Midoriya?" Izuku is too busy going into shock to form a coherent response. "Midoriya?" Aizawa asks, and it's sort of wild how the man actually sounds concerned. "Are you all right?" "That's two." Izuku responds. Aizawa blinks back. "2 soulmates in one day." Izuku elaborates, "and 3 in a month." Aizawa hums and looks down at whatever paper he's scoring. Is he already grading papers on the first day of class? And marks something. "Interesting. I've gotten 2 soulmates today. You and Bakugu." "Oh god. Oh geez. Oh, holy moly, Izuku is going to have a slide." W-dash. Izuku shakes his head so furiously he can feel his brain bouncing back and forth against his skull. "What?" "Pack your things up, Midoriya. You ought to head home." Izuku continues to stare for a moment before snapping out of it and saying, Yes, sir." Once he finally finishes struggling to shove his things into his backpack and has got it securely on his back, Izuku realizes that somewhere in the past few minutes, his teacher's frown has smoothed into something a bit kinder. So, Hitoshi never managed to get Denki's number. Oops. Yeah, he knows. Classic movie mistake. Listen, there were more pressing things going on, okay? But now Hitoshi is stuck praying to God that Denki made it into UA. Of course he did. He had a FING awesome quirk. He had hoped he would be able to find Denki somewhere in the UA cafeteria on the first day, but no dice. On the other side of the soul mark, Denki was busy freaking out in the hallway after realizing that Idru, Hanta, and Mina are all his soulmates. Then, how many of these things is he going to have? That's a rhetorical question. He knows the marks on his back count them. He's not that stupid. Hitoshi does find him the next day. Or rather, Denki finds him. Hitoshi is standing in the lunch line, a half-filled lunch tray in his hands, when he hears someone yelling his name and turns to see a blur of yellow coming his way. He startles, jumping back against the cold metal of the lunch line, but Denki has amazing reflexes, apparently, and skids to a stop just in time. "Hitoshi!" he shouts. "I'm 5 feet away from you," Hitoshi says. "You don't have to yell." "Oh, sorry," Denki says at a much more reasonable volume. "I was just really excited." "Yeah, I could tell." Hitoshi moves forward in the lunch line, and Denki follows along. "Hitoshi, dude, I couldn't find you anywhere yesterday." And vice versa, Hitoshi says. It evolves into a yawn, which isn't rare for him. Okay, Denki says, I'm gonna put my number in your phone, but, hey, do you want to come to a party at my place? Second conversation, going good so far. Sure, Hitoshi says. He's, never been to a party before? Okay, Denki says, holding out a hand. Phone. I'll put my number in. As Hitoshi hands over his phone, Denki continues to ramble. Okay, the party's on Saturday, 5 p.m. You can spend the night if you want. All first years are welcome. I'll send you my address. Oh, this is gonna be awesome, Toshi. Then he looks up from the phone with these big puppy dog eyes. Oh, God, this is their second conversation and Hitoshi is smitten. Yeah, Hitoshi breathes, and if he's staring at Denki like he's the first glass of water he's seen in months, that's no one's business but his. Awesome, Denki says. Someone behind him calls his name, and Hitoshi looks over his shoulder to see a girl with pink skin calling for him. Ah, that's Mina. You know, I found out that 3 of my classmates are my soulmates yesterday? Isn't that awesome? Oh, okay, I gotta go or she's gonna drag me over there. Talk to you later, Toshi. Hitoshi stares dumbly after him. The kid behind him clears their throat, and he realizes belatedly that he's been holding up the line this whole time. So you 3 are dating? For the 5th time, Ashido yes, Momo sighs, closing her eyes. Shido yawns. He's already eaten all his food and he's still hungry. He contemplates Tenya's plate of Alfredo. Ah, that's so cute. Ashido falls back into her seat dramatically, forcing Tokoyami to scoot over. Dark Shadow shoots her a dirty look. So like, how long have you guys known each other? Like, how did it happen? You're all from hero families, right? Is that how? On the inside, Shido winces at the reminder. Actually, my family is very prominent in the support gear industry, Momo says, just in time for the beginning of Tenya's rant about the Ingenium line and upholding its honor. Momo and Shido have heard it dozens of times, but Ashido seems interested, which is all that matters. While Tenya is distracted, Shido reaches across and nabs a piece of chicken. Chicken. Not yum. It makes him think of Takami. He's been thinking about that conversation a lot, okay? Especially after Mom's hospital accidentally caught fire. Takami had shown up almost instantly. It was freaky. And Takami had rushed to save the Todorokis. He was almost frantic about it, which you wouldn't expect from a seasoned hero such as Hawks. It was like he had some sort of attachment to them. Especially Shido. Shido got himself out of the hospital, thank you very much. No, he didn't abandon his family, but he was already in the cafe getting lunch on the first floor, and it was totally unsafe to try and run back up to them on stairs that could collapse any second. When Shido had ran out the front door, coughing and using a ripped piece of his shirt to shield some kid he'd picked up's mouth and nose, the relief on Takami's face was obvious. He's been worrying about it, okay? Call him paranoid, whatever. Not to mention all the shit the firefighters had said about it probably being arson rather than an accident. No matter how hard he tries, Tuya's face won't leave his mind. Shido's classmates are, well, they're interesting, that's for sure. That Bakugu kid won't stop screaming at everyone, except for Kirishima and Midoriya, and Shido thinks he heard each of them say something about being soulbound to him. To be fair, though, that doesn't mean Bakugu is necessarily nice to them. Shido's heard a fair share of anger directed their way. Bakugu's quirk fits his personality, that's for sure. If they fought, how would Shido win? Theoretically, he thinks if he could freeze Bakugu's hands, he wouldn't be able to sweat that explosion stuff, but despite his 24/7 rage, Bakugu doesn't seem stupid. Would Bakugu let him? Or would he come up with a way to avoid him? Shido would be willing to bet on the latter. Then there's Ashido, Kaminari, and Siro, together with Kirishima, they just seem like a bundle of troublemakers. Strong quirks. He's having trouble thinking about how he might beat Kaminari in a battle. Or at the very least, Kaminari's quirk. He has no clue how good Kaminari's mind is in a fight, but in theory, it would be very easy for Kaminari to knock him out before he could even activate his ice. He'll just have to activate it quicker, then. That Midoriya kid's quirk seems wild. He acts like he got it last month or something. He broke his finger just to put some extra strength into throwing a ball. How would he ever withstand a full-blown battle? Are you considering how you'd beat everyone in a fight, Shido? Momo sighs from next to him, not even looking up from her paper. Yeah, Shudo says unapologetic. Tenya raises an eyebrow. That's not very hero-like. Yeah, Shudo repeats. Good. He might have some trouble surpassing All Might with these kids in his class. Not that he'd say that out loud. Anyway, Momo says, finally looking up, Kaminari invited us to his party on Saturday. Shudo hums. Are we going? I would like to, Momo says with a big smile. It will be much better than the hero ball, I think. What about you, Tenya? Tenya narrows his eyes. Will there be parental supervision? Will there be alcohol? How late is it? Who's invited? Momo laughs, covering her mouth with her hand. Shudo wishes she wouldn't. Her smile is pretty. Yeah, we're going. I'm not going to a FNG party, Kaken says. He leans back in his seat and props his feet on the desk, ignoring Ida glaring holes in his head from the back of the room. Izuku sticks out his bottom lip. Come on, Kaken, it'll be fun. Have you ever even been to a party like this before? Have you? Okay, point taken, Izuku says, sighing, but really it'll be fun. We can just go for a little bit and leave if you don't like it. Is Izuku treating Kaken like a 5-year-old? Yeah, maybe. Listen when needs must. Why would I do that? Kaken asks. Izuku scrambles for an answer. Because it would make me happy? He tries. Kaken rolls his eyes. Whatever. We'll go. That really worked. Izuku beams and, feeling particularly bold, throws his arms around Kaken's shoulders from where he's sitting behind him. Kaken makes no move to throw him off, that is, he makes no move until Ishido spots them, squeals, and says, You guys are so cute. Katsuki is sick and tired of soulmates. First there was Deku, and for a long time it was only Deku, and just that idiot was enough to make Katsuki constantly paranoid. He spent his entire life since the marks living in fear that one night, Mom would go too far and Deku would start asking his stupid questions or running his stupid mouth. It's hard enough explaining the bruises to someone who's always glued to your side like a green koala. Then All Might, which, okay, universe, thanks for the existential crisis. His goddamned idol, the #1 hero in Japan, in the whole world, soulbound to him. Him, Bakugo Katsuki. When All Might had let slip that he doesn't get much physical feeling from his marks, because of the state he's in. Despite how terrible that is for All Might, Katsuki had breathed a sigh of relief. And that Kirishima guy, that idiot, that endearing idiot with the big bright smile and the great jokes and the unending optimism, Katsuki hates him. Hates him and his good morning texts and his pre-class hugs and his constant video game references with a FING passion. Aizawa is a whole other enigma that he doesn't even want to get started on. They'd figured out the bond after Izuku left for Recovery Girl during the Quirk aptitude test. When Izuku broke his finger, idiot, Katsuki had gone to run after him, but Aizawa stopped him. They were both holding their right hands, and in that moment Katsuki knew that Deku had found another one of his fuckers. It wasn't until a solid 10 minutes later that he realized one of the marks on his back felt a little bit different. Aizawa said the same. Even a week into class, Katsuki still doesn't understand that man. He respects him, no doubt, which is something Katsuki doesn't say often. But God, one second Aizawa will be making them run 80 laps, and the next he'll be pulling Ishido aside when she starts crying and quietly talking to her, and although Katsuki can't tell what they're saying, he does see Aizawa's soft smile when she laughs a little. Right? Ishido. God. She's one of the marks on his back too. These soulmates just don't stop coming. They're spilling out of the walls like cockroaches. And she's FNG bright and cheery too, and a goddamned idiot if he's ever seen one, and she's really good at science and knows a lot about internet culture and always answers Katsuki's questions on biology homework and lets Katsuki borrow some of her nail polish and she used to be, he just had Deku to worry about. Katsuki still has more marks on his back without names to go along with them. He hopes he never even sets foot in the same room as the people on the other side of those stupid tallies. Katsuki can't believe he got dragged along to this idiotic party. Uraraka had said, and Katsuki FANG quotes, that Kirishima and Deku had him wrapped around their fingers. The hell? He came because he didn't want to be the only one stuck at home, okay? It's entirely a coincidence that Deku thanks him for agreeing to come the second Katsuki picks him up. Whatever, Katsuki grunts. He looks down at his phone, pretending to check the GPS. His ears aren't red, it. Let's just get this over with. Deku gives that giggle that's specific to him, you know, the sort of nervous, sort of happy one that pitches up at the end and leaves him with crinkled eyes and a big smile, showing off the gap in his front teeth. Katsuki didn't say that. You didn't hear that. We'll have fun, Kaken, trust me. Deku says. There's a foot of distance between them. Both of them are walking half on the grass and half on the sidewalk, which is totally normal. You'll have fun, Katsuki corrects. Deku shrugs. If you say so. He raises his pointer finger, suddenly taking on a determined expression. I swear, Kaken, I will make this night super fun for you. Shoving his cold hands into his jacket pockets, Katsuki barks a laugh. Yeah, sure, Deku. I'm being serious. Deku splutters, but they've finally made it to Pikachu's stupid party. The house is nice, not anything too fancy, but not too bad either. There are multicolored lights shining through the windows, and the loud music is shaking the ground outside. Katsuki wonders what kind of parents let a 15-year-old throw an unsupervised party and invite 100 other 15-year-olds, but hey, Katsuki is the psycho who showed up. You knock, Deku, Katsuki says, you're the one who wanted to come. Deku rolls his eyes and knocks. The door swings open almost immediately, revealing a slightly swaying Pikachu. Jairu is next to him, looking much more sober, with a hand around his waist to keep him steady. Hey guys, she says, come on in. Pikachu cheers, raising his fists to the sky. Hell yeah. Good. Who gave this idiot alcohol? Why is there alcohol at this party? Would it make Katsuki lame to throw it all out? Does he actually care about being lame? He's going to have to keep an eye on Deku. This idiot gets drunk on Capri-Sun. Deku half-drags Katsuki into the house. Katsuki can't stop staring at the hand on his wrist, his heart racing about 1,000,000 miles an hour. He really should not react this way to a simple touch. That sounds wrong. He means it shouldn't scare him. And it shouldn't surprise him either. If it were up to Katsuki, it would be commonplace. But he's stomped his relationship with Deku into the ground too much for that. He's surprised Deku still sticks around. Not that Deku wants to, honestly. It would kill him if he didn't. It, Katsuki, stop it. Stop thinking about this bullshit. Deku's dragged him over to Uraraka and Azui. Uraraka's cheeks are a little more rosy than usual, but she seems to hold her alcohol well. She should not be able to do that. They're 15, what the F dash. Is Katsuki the only a-hole here who hasn't been drunk before? The girls have their arms around each other's waists, and Uraraka is leaning over to kiss Azui on the cheek. Ah, right, they made a whole scene about being soulmates at lunch on Wednesday. Soulmates everywhere, not just his, pouring out of the faucets. See Katsuki's point? Hey Ochako Tsu. Deku says, still holding on to Katsuki's arm. Katsuki stares down at it with rising heat in his cheeks, oblivious to the wave Tsu sends his way. Uraraka pointedly ignores him. Deku starts to chat with the girls. Katsuki continues to stare down at the hand, so casually placed on his arm. He's going to implode, he thinks. He sniffs, but he doesn't smell any smoke or caramel, so that's good. Katsuki doesn't snap out of it until some kid he doesn't recognize comes by. Azui seems to know him, but she doesn't seem particularly warm to him. He's got short blonde hair and weird-looking eyes, and he introduces himself with a name that starts with M that Katsuki immediately forgets. He puts a drink in Deku's hands and Katsuki reacts on instinct with an incoherent yell. Okay, fun, the boy with the M name says, blinking at Katsuki, is all of your class like that? Just Bakugu, Uraraka says solemnly, and Azui nods along. A girl with a pink ponytail comes by, grabs the boy by the back of the shirt, and drags him away. Well, that's none of Katsuki's business. Why'd you yell, Kaken? Deku asks. Katsuki gestures to the drink. I once watched you get drunk off a glass of water. Uraraka snorts. Ah, Kaken. Deku coos, you do care. Katsuki's face goes bright red. Does he smell caramel? From the looks of it, Deku does. because he grimaces and looks down at Katsuki's hands. Hey, Kaken Dash. I'm gonna go get some air. Katsuki shouts and runs in a random direction. This is all this spending actual time with Deku and actually talking to him has done something weird to his brain. He hates it. Katsuki comes to a stop on the back porch. The door slams behind him, and he winces at the smell of smoke. If there's something burnt on it, he's going to owe Pikachu's parents for it, isn't he? This really esses. Hitoshi hasn't shown up yet, and Denki is getting nervous. Really nervous. Denki is standing next to the door, tapping his foot at about 1,000,000 miles an hour. Hyuka confiscated his cup, and now he's checking his phone obsessively in the hopes of update texts. What if he doesn't show? What will Denki do? He's gonna show, idiot, Hyuka says as though reading his mind. She's staring down at her phone, but she does that a lot. She thinks it makes her look cool or something. Denki is pretty good at telling when her attention is and is not actually on him. But what if he dash? He's going to, Hyuka says firmly. Denki bites his lip. I met him yesterday before class. Seems like a good guy. Totally smitten with you. Hanta and Aijuru stumble by, hands around each other's shoulders as they sing off tune to music no one else can hear. Denki grimaces. Don't break anything. He calls after them, and Aijuru gives a thumbs up. Then, Hyuka's words finally register and he gapes at her. You talk to him? He says. Yeah. Hyuka's gum snaps. I mean he's his own person, Denki. The doorbell rings. Hitoshi is so late. The door opens, and there's Denki with a gigantic smile on his face. Hitoshi winces. Hey, I'm so sorry Dash. You came. Denki cheers. He pulls Hitoshi in, and he stumbles, falling against Denki's chest. He very quickly detaches, spluttering something meaningless. I was starting to get worried, Toshi. Hitoshi laughs nervously, looking around the room. He's not one for parties. So many people and so much noise. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. My foster mom was being difficult, Hitoshi says. Difficult, meaning her 1000th rant about how Hitoshi doesn't deserve UA and will get expelled any day now. Great mood booster. Nah, I get it, Denki says. He throws an arm around Hitoshi's shoulder and swings the other one out in front of him grandly. Welcome to La Casa de Caminari. I don't speak any Spanish, I'm never saying that again. Make yourself at home. Hitoshi struggles to pick out people he knows. There's Jairu, who he met yesterday. She waves at him, and he waves nervously back. His heart drops when her wave turns into a thumbs up. For some reason, everything she does is sort of scary. Or maybe that's just the coward in Hitoshi. This is sort of terrifying. He shudders, thinking of the conversation they had yesterday. She threatened him quite a bit on behalf of her best friend. There's a couple kids here from his class, but if he's being honest he knows absolutely none of their names. He knows more hero students than he does general education. And in true introvert fashion, Hitoshi says, "Where's the food?" Hey, Kaken. Kaken, having finally returned to Izuku after quite a few minutes outside, grunts and looks down at him. Yeah, Deku. Izuku points towards the corner of the room, where Todoroki is standing in the corner, arms crossed. A few feet away from him, Ida and Yaoyorozu are doing a slow dance that does not go along with the music at all. I'm gonna go talk to Todoroki, Izuku says. Who? Kaken asks. He follows Izuku's finger to Todoroki. Oh, candy cane? Yeah, whatever, do what you want. I'm gonna go find the other dumbass. Izuku thinks Aijuru is with Ishido, which spells nothing but trouble. They're a cute couple, but they're so high energy that it hurts. He'll leave that one to Kaken, thank you very much. Okay, bye, Kaken. Izuku says. He pats Kaken on the back as he leaves, which he thinks is about the best he can do with the way their relationship is right now. He bounds over to the corner of the room and stops a respectful distance from Todoroki. He seems like the kind of guy to value his personal space, you know? Hey! Izuku says. Todoroki startles and turns almost completely, so that he's fully facing him, and it's only now that Izuku realizes that one eye is a milky white. Geez, that's sort of embarrassing on Izuku's part. Todoroki stays silent. Okay. Izuku talks to Kaken on the regular. He can deal with this. I'm Midoriya Izuku, he says, holding out a hand. Todoroki looks down at it impassively, then slides his gaze back up to Izuku. Without taking it, he says, Todoroki Shudo. Why are you talking to me? Okay, he's a bit rude. That's okay. Izuku's sure he's super nice on the inside. Well, I just saw you standing over here by yourself, and I thought you might like someone to talk to. You thought wrong. But clearly this guy doesn't want to talk, but listen. But I have so many questions about your quirk. Izuku says in a sudden outburst, and instantly regrets it. Do you? Todoroki asks. If you're only talking to me because of my father, you can leave. Izuku blinks at him. Who's your father? And at that, Todoroki visibly relaxes. Ask away, Midoriya. Izuku really wants to follow that line of conversation, but he's way more interested in Todoroki's quirk than his father. Okay. First one. Can you use both sides of your quirk at the same time? Todoroki nods. Yes. I'm partial to my right side, so I don't use both often, but they balance each other out so that I don't get too hot or too cold while using it. Izuku holds his pen to his mouth. Did he bring his notebook along to a party? Maybe. Leave him alone. Luckily, Todoroki doesn't seem weirded out by his scribbling. How hot do you think you could get your flames without overheating? For instance, Endeavor has Hellflame, but he can't even use it for a full minute. Could you maybe make them blue like that? Todoroki seems far more interested than Izuku expected. I expect I could with enough training, although I've never tried. That's a good idea, Midoriya. Tenya and Yaoyorozu circle over. They're dancing in wide arcs, oblivious to the people they're forcing out of the way. They come to a stop in front of Todoroki and Izuku, and Yaoyorozu holds her hand out for Todoroki to take. Tenya gives Izuku an over-exaggerated wave as Todoroki takes Yaoyorozu's hand, and the three of them stumble into an awkward dance. Todoroki, it seems, has 2 left feet. There's a loud crash from the other side of the room. Mineta goes flying across the room, Kaminari, Jairu, and Ashido running underneath him. The girls are yelling many rude words that Izuku is unwilling to repeat, and Kaminari is shouting at Mineta to stay out of the house forever. Fun. Izuku melts into the corner, messing around on his phone. He's not really good at dancing, so, Izuku, come dance with me. And suddenly he's being pulled into Ochako's arms as she swings him around. The noise that comes out of his mouth isn't entirely human, if he's being honest. Hi, Chaco. He shouts as she jumps around and he follows after her uncertainly. Laughing, she lets him go and he stumbles back a few feet. Ochako pulls the next person she sees, Aj, into a dance, and Izuku figures he ought to leave her to it. Chuckling, Izuku retreats back into the corner, watching his friends mess around. The ding of a text arriving on his phone is barely audible, but he manages to catch it. His heart drops into his stomach before he even finishes reading the message. Denki is adorable. Hitoshi has probably said that 1,000,000 times now, but he'll say it 1,000,000 times more. Denki is really, really adorable, and Hitoshi cannot get over it. Denki is so committed to being a hero too. He doesn't do it on purpose, but he mentions it all the time, his class, his training, the heroes he looks up to. Hitoshi thinks he wants to be a hero, but is he really trying his best? In comparison to Denki, hell, in comparison to most of Class 1, what is he doing to better himself? Is he training on his own? Is he studying hero law? Is he studying quirks? The answer to all of those, by the way, is no. No, no, and no. Denki deserves better. He deserves much, much better than Hitoshi, doesn't he? Well, Hitoshi just supposes he'll have to be the best goddamn hero he can be. Izuku was having a lot of fun. He swears he was. He really enjoyed meeting more of his classmates and spending time with his friends. But as he stares down at the text Mom sent him, all that has been thrown out the window. Frantically, he whips his head around, scanning the crowd. Kaken, he shouts, but it's barely a whisper against the music playing. He needs to find Kaken, he needs to... Hey, are you all right? There's a boy with purple hair and tired eyes that's got a hand on his shoulder. Panicking, Izuku shrugs it off. Not really. He shouts, way too loudly and in an extremely unwarranted cheery tone. Is he crying? Of course he is. Oh my God, the boy whispers, eyes wide, and Izuku gets the feeling the boy didn't mean to say that out loud. At a much more normal volume, the boy says, hey, hey, in a tone that he probably thinks is soothing. He holds out his hands. Hesitantly, and he looks just as panicked. Hey, it's a bit overwhelming in here, yeah? Come on, follow me. Izuku's mind is going fuzzy. I need Kaken Dash. I'll find Kaken for you, but you need to get away from all this noise first, okay? The boy places a hand on Izuku's back, feather light, and Izuku lets him guide him outside to the porch. He's dizzy. Have you been drinking? The boy asks, do you feel like you drank something nasty? Is he asking if Izuku's been drugged? Izuku shakes his head, but it hurts so he stops almost immediately. Oh, haven't had anything. I just got this message from my mom, my dash. He takes a sharp breath. Nope. Not oversharing tonight? Izuku, not tonight. That's okay, the boy says. I'm Hitoshi, by the way. Izuku, he says. Is the world crumbling to bits and pieces, or is that just him? Okay, Izuku, do you want to call whoever Kaken is? Izuku fumbles on his phone for Kaken's contact. Kaken put it in himself. It reads, my name is Katsuki, not F. Kaken, dumbass, but stops. Kaken can't do anything about this. He better not ruin his night over it. Not like Kaken wants anything to do with him, anyway. No, Izuku whispers, no, I don't. I get it. Do you want to talk about it? No, Izuku repeats. That's fair. Hitoshi laughs. I'm a random stranger, after all. I'm just Dash. Izuku stands. He does it too quickly, though, and his vision blurs. He groans, rubbing his hand against his forehead. I'm just going to go home. Hitoshi makes an odd noise, like all the words in the English lexicon just disappeared from his brain. Whoa, are you sure that's safe by yourself? He gestures up to the dark sky. It's late. Yeah, Izuku says, I don't live that far. I walked here. Do you want me to walk you home? No, it's okay. It's just a few minutes away. It's 20 minutes. Really, I walked here by myself and I'll walk home by myself. Hitoshi doesn't look too happy about this, but nonetheless, he doesn't protest. If you need anything, feel free to find me. I'm in 1C. Izuku waves half-heartedly before heading home. And then there's Aizawa Shoyuda, on his patrol across town. He's about ready to call it a night, what with the emotional roller coaster that his soulmates are putting him through. Katsuki has been feeling something all night that makes Shoyuda think of when he met Hisashi, like some kind of a lovesick puppy. And drunk. Katsuki is so terribly drunk. Izuku, on the other hand, was absolutely giddy all night, but all of a sudden he's absolutely terrified. He doesn't think that Izuku is in danger, not quite yet. Maybe he won't be at all. But Shoyuda will be keeping an eye on Izuku in their next class, that much is certain. Izuku, for once, doesn't seem as though he wants to be at school. He's slumped low over his desk, where usually he is sat straight with full attention on Shuda's lecture. Whatever he's scribbling on his paper definitely isn't his notes, and his normally bright eyes are glazed over, accentuated by deep under-eye bags. Clearly, he didn't get much sleep over the weekend. Katsuki keeps turning around to check on him, and really, Shoyuda can't blame him for that. Kirishima, too, is constantly whispering jokes to Izuku, most likely in an effort to cheer him up. Uraraka and Ida, from the other side of the classroom, seem far more interested in how Izuku is doing than in their classwork. Well, Shoyuda supposes he can credit them for being observant. Izuku's head slides off his hand and hits his desk with a loud thump. Kirishima reaches over with a pencil at the ready. Leave him, Shoyuda says, and Kirishima doesn't protest. It wasn't until the day after the party that Izuku realized his soul marks were off. One more of them has been active with someone else's emotions. And Izuku, for the life of him, has absolutely no clue who could possibly be on the other side of the mark. If he's being entirely honest, most of the night of the party is a total blur. He can't remember who he did and didn't talk to, or who he met. And then there's the whole business with Izuku is eating lunch in the classroom today. With everything going on, he can't sit there with his friends and pretend that everything is okay. Especially not when their marks are probably broadcasting his distress at top volume. Honestly, today is the sort of day where just being in that loud, crowded cafeteria would drive him completely insane. He is extremely lucky Aizawa isn't eating his lunch in the classroom today. The whole thing with Aizawa is just confusing. Kaken had said he shares his sentiments on that. How is he supposed to interact with his teacher now, after realizing that they're soulmates? What level are they on? Where's the line, and how does Izuku know not to cross it? Does Izuku continue to treat him like any other teacher, or as more of a friend? Somewhere in between? Izuku meant to distract himself with this line of thought, but it's only messing him up more. When he comes back, how does Izuku explain his soul marks, especially Aizawa and Tashinori's? Does Izuku really have to explain it? Will he be angry if Izuku doesn't, or angry if he finds out on his own? Geez. Izuku needs something else to think about, so he fishes his journal out of his bag and starts to doodle on Aizawa's page. He's been working on a new sketch of Aizawa, since his old one is from a few years ago when he first discovered Eraserhead and had much less information on him, seeing as how most of the pictures of him online are from blurry CCTV footage. Izuku? What are you doing in here? Dang it, Aizawa startled him, and now the ink is blotted on drawing Aizawa's eyes. Sorry, sir. Izuku splutters, already gathering up his books and bento box. I'll go back to the cafeteria. He says, and that's a total lie. If he can't eat in here, he's going to eat in the bathroom or some random closet. Whatever keeps him away from people. Aizawa holds up a hand. He crosses the room and sits down at his desk. That's not necessary, Midoriya. Feel free to eat in here. I'm just going to grade some papers, you're no bother. Izuku slowly sinks back down into his chair and reopens his bento box. Thank you. Aizawa waves a dismissive hand as he looks down to his papers. They sit there in silence for a short while, Izuku eating his bento and scribbling in his journal while Aizawa marks papers up with red pen. Until finally Aizawa says, You never answered my question. Izuku chokes on his rice. I'm sorry, sir. You never answered my question, Aizawa repeats, placing down his pen. Why are you eating lunch in here? Izuku's throat goes dry as his brain scrambles for an excuse. Was doing my homework? That doesn't look like homework. Izuku is so glad Aizawa can't see exactly what it is, because that would be super embarrassing. Izuku shovels some more rice into his throat in order to stall his response. I finished my homework, sir. Then why didn't you go to the cafeteria? What's wrong, Midoriya? Aizawa's full attention is on him, and Izuku hates that. Is there something going on? No, sir. Izuku says too quickly. He stands and starts to shove his things back into his bag. In fact, I ought to head to the cafeteria right now. Izuku freezes at the hard look in Aizawa's eyes and the firm tone in his voice. Yes, sir. Aizawa stays quiet for a moment. Then, I want you to know, Izuku, that just because I am your teacher doesn't mean our soulmate status doesn't still stand. Even if that were not a factor, you can feel free to come to me if there is a problem. You understand that, don't you? His hands shake against the metal of the doorknob. Yes, sir. Everything is fine, I promise. Aizawa stares for a long while, then finally nods. Go on then. Izuku eats the rest of his lunch in a bathroom stall. Hitoshi doesn't know what he expected from Denki's friends. Whatever it wasn't this, although in hindsight, he figures that this is about right. Chug. Chug. Hitoshi wrinkles his nose in disgust as his soulmate chugs down a styrofoam cup that he and his friends had appropriately dubbed the sludge cup. Within it is all their leftovers from their lunches. Chocolate milk and water and orange juice and pudding and barbecue and Denki gets to the end and wipes a mustache of some sort of liquid off his upper lip as his friends cheer. That's disgusting, Hitoshi says, but he's laughing all the same. Denki whoops, then immediately doubles over with his hands over his stomach. Gotta go! He shouts, sounding particularly pained, and dashes out of the cafeteria. Yeah, that seems about right. Ashido and Kirishima start some wild conversation full of references that Hitoshi could never, ever hope to understand. Hanta leans over and smacks Ashido upside the head, and Kirishima pretends to get all up in arms over this attack on his girlfriend. Jairu continues to stare down at her phone as Yaoyorozu rattles on to her about some sort of science thing that goes way over Hitoshi's head, and from the looks of it, almost everyone's head, but Ida and Todoroki listen with rapt attention. Uraraka keeps leaning over and whispering to Ida, though, and they both seem particularly worried about something. Bakugo is sulking at the corner of the table. Isn't it amazing that Hitoshi learned most of these names at one party, but he literally knows not a single name from Class 1C. That Midoriya kid that he met at the party, that soulmate kid, if he's being honest about how he's been thinking about him, has been mentioned by almost everyone at the table quite a few times now. Hitoshi hasn't seen him at all today, though, which is frustrating. The longer he waits to tell him about the mark, the more likely it is that Midoriya will be upset with him. "Hey, Kaken, what are you doing sulking over there?" Ashido jeers, and Bakugo snaps up with a snarl at his lips. That's Kaken? That's the person Midoriya said he needed? Interesting. No one's looking at him, and already Ashido and the rest of the table's attention has left Bakugo after some light teasing, so Hitoshi joins Bakugo in his corner. The blonde glares at him. "What do you want?" "I just wanted to let you know, Hitoshi trails off. This was definitely a bad idea. Hey, random stranger. I met your friend at the party on Friday and he sort of sobbed in my arms and said he needed to talk to someone with the same nickname as you, and I let him walk home by himself at midnight. What's up?" Bakugo slams a hand on the table. "What?" "I met that Midoriya kid at the party on Friday night," Hitoshi says, figuring it's best to omit the part where Midoriya doesn't know that he and Hitoshi are soulmates, and he was pretty upset. "I don't know why, but he kept saying he needed you, but then when I told him he ought to call you he decided not to and walked home." "You're the a-hole that made Deku walk home by himself," Bakugo says, then quickly tacks on, "You're the reason I had to get Yaoyorozu's FING limo driver to bring me home." Hitoshi isn't quite sure what to say about that, not the part where Yaoyorozu has a limo, because that totally tracks, but the part where he made Deku walk home by himself. "Sorry." "Whatever," Bakugo scoffs, and Hitoshi gets the strong feeling that this conversation is over, so he turns back to his new friends and lets himself join their chaos. Ashido leans over and yells at Todoroki, no idea why she's yelling, that's just her normal. "Hey, are you excited for tomorrow's rescue simulation at the USJ?" Todoroki shrugs and eats another piece of sushi. "Cool." Ashido shouts and turns to the next person to ask the exact same thing. That person happens to be Hitoshi. He looks at her with a blank stare, and she stares back at him with an expectant face for like a full minute. Then finally reality hits her and she remembers that he's definitely not allowed to participate in a hero simulation, and she turns to Yaoyorozu. Just another reason to get his act together. He supposes the hero kids are his friends now, too, somehow. Shoyuta has a bad feeling about today's training. He can't pinpoint exactly what it is, but as his students file onto the bus his heart feels heavy. He drops some extra medicine into his eyes. Just in case. Katsuki comes up next to him, hands shoved in his pockets. "Why are you so nervous?" He grunts, and Shoyuta curses the soul marks. FING kids. When he told his husband about Izuku and Katsuki, he had just laughed and laughed, like it was the funniest thing in the world. Then, wiping the tears from his eyes, he'd wheezed, "Invite them over for dinner, Shoyuta." Shoyuta had responded, "That's the worst idea you've ever had, Zashi. And really these kids are wild." Izuku keeps breaking bones and Katsuki's mark keeps making Shoyuta unbearably angry. Shoyuta should probably get them in therapy or something. "I'm not nervous," Shoyuta says. Katsuki side-eyes him. "Stupid marks, getting him attached to kids and sheet." "Yes, you are." Katsuki says, "Marks." Shoyuta rolls his eyes. Ida is calling for Katsuki to get on the bus, but Katsuki ignores him, keeping his eyes on Shoyuta. Izuku stands behind Ida on the top step of the bus entrance, watching them with worry clear on his face. Every emotion that boy feels is clear on his face, though. I don't know, Katsuki, Shoyuta sighs, just get on the bus. Hey, are they part of the simulation? And at that, Shuta's heart stops. He should have listened to his guts. 13, get the kids to safety. I'll hold these villains off. Izuku shouts after him as he leaps down towards the villains. He's begging Shoyuta to stay, listing off all the disadvantages Shoyuta has in this fight. Goddamn it, kid. Can't you turn off that amazing genius brain of yours for half a second? Well, at least it's a nice reminder of who it is he's defending as he barrels towards the intruders. He's defending amazing kids like Izuku, and Katsuki, and Yaoyorozu, and Ida, and every kid Niza charged him with teaching this year. As Shoyuta fights, he keeps a section of his brain painfully aware of his soul marks on how the kids are doing in this situation. His heart goes insane with Izuku's fear. Keep it together, kid, he thinks, and almost like magic, Izuku calms. Shoyuta can't afford to distract his other senses, not when he's this outnumbered, but he manages to hear a yell that sounds suspiciously like Izuku off to his right, followed by a cataclysmic noise of crashing water and dozens of overlapping screams. Whatever Izuku did, it knocked some villains out of the game. Shit, it broke his finger to... Wait, what is Izuku doing over there? Goddamn it. It must be the mist guy at the front of the pack, some sort of teleportation quirk. How many of the kids got separated? Are they alone, or do they have each other at the very least? Were they only scattered throughout the USJ, or... He can't think about that right now. Katsuki's explosions heat his palms, although it's hard for him to feel against the burn of his capture gear against his skin. Katsuki is nothing but rage, which is nothing new for that boy, but God, he's angry. Shoyuta hopes he'll keep his cool. Or, the Bakugu Katsuki version of cool. There's nothing from Nemuri or Hizashi. Dabi is afraid and confused. He's felt it. Nemuri and Hizashi aren't far behind, Shuta's sure. He's hoping he'll get something from them soon. That'll mean they know what's going on. That they're on their way. There's no way Shoyuta can fight off all of these villains on his own. But his students' lives are on the line, and he'll be dead if he doesn't try. Shoyuta barely hears it over the pain. He barely hears Shigaraki's rasping threats. He barely hears the Nomu's wheezing breaths as it shoves Shuta's face deeper into the ground. But he hears enough to know when he ought to lift his head and stare Shigaraki straight on. Hizashi and Nemuri's marks both ignite with panic. They've gotten word. Or maybe they've been panicking for longer than that. Maybe Shoyuta had made it through long before. It's hard to tell if he's being honest. His eyes burn so much he feels like they're on fire, but he'll keep them locked on Shigaraki for his entire life as he needs to. Ajui's face is intact, and Shuta's own face was a price he was perfectly willing to pay, and always will be. Behind Ajui is Izuku, staring on in horror. Horror that Shoyuta can feel, resonating through his being. Not entirely his, but not entirely other, either. Your soulmate's feelings always feel like that. You can feel them, but you're distanced, farther away from them the less profound they are. Izuku's emotions right now, well, they're so close to his own that Shoyuta can't tell what's from his own brain and what's from his soulmate's. Katsuki is still out there somewhere. Most of the kids are still out there somewhere. Shuta's face goes back down to the ground, and he prays to God he kept his eyes on Shigaraki long enough. He's not sure he'll be able to lift his head back up if need be. His soulmates are getting closer, Hizashi and Nemuri, he means. Thank God. Right now, he'd rather Izuku and Katsuki be miles away. But if the best he can get is them alive, he'll take it. Shoyuta only manages to hear the beginning of Izuku's shouts before he goes unconscious. Dabi feels it all happen before he hears about it. 1 second he's sat on the musty couch, curled up to Kigo. Their fight ended much the same way they always do, quiet resignation that they'll never see eye to eye on the Endeavor situation. Kigo is carding his fingers through Dabi's hair as they watch TV, and Dabi is half asleep on his shoulder. The next, Dabi is filled with terror. Shudo? No, Aizawa. He chokes, sitting straight up. Terror from both, and Shudo's side of it quickly cools to background music as he supposedly takes in the situation, something like annoyance, then anger, then he feels sick to his stomach for just a second. And Aizawa, he turns into pure desperation and there's capture gear, rubbing against his palms, the burn of wind in his eyes. Physical feelings too now? Whatever's going on, it must be something big. Babes. Kigo was just as tired as Dabi, and now he's rubbing at his bleary eyes with one hand. Dabi, what's wrong? Dabi hisses as his right arm goes freezing cold. Something's going on with them, he says, which he figures is enough for Kigo to intuit who he's talking about. They're going insane. He looks up to the clock, still school hours. Dabi struggles through the ice and the fear and the wind for a long while, face shoved pathetically into Kigo's shoulder. Then he's screaming, and he thinks he's bitten Kigo accidentally a few times, but Kigo holds him tight and barely flinches. His face feels like it's being crushed, his arm broken, and he knows that he's only getting the watered-down version of this pain. Kigo shushes him, holding onto him tighter, but Dabi continues to scream until his throat goes hoarse. His eyes, Aizawa's quirk. Is Aizawa's quirk going to be, he can't, where is Shudo, is Aizawa dying? Oh no. The ringing in his ears starts to die down alongside the pain, and Dabi can only assume that Aizawa has finally gone unconscious. That much pain for any longer would have driven Dabi insane. Dabi's face stays shoved in Kigo's shoulder. This is really ruining his tough guy look. He hears something come on the news. A reporter says something about UA, an incident at a training ground. Of course. Kigo, Dabi gasps, grabbing at his boyfriend's arm. Kigo, has anyone been hospitalized? You need to look, sweetheart, Kigo says. Dabi shakes his head. He's not entirely certain he could. Kigo puts his hands on either side of Dabi's face and pulls. His head comes up, along with the spit and the blood from where he's bitten his tongue, and Kigo turns him so that his eyes are locked on the TV. There's shaky camera footage as a journalist points behind her. At the end of an ambulance, Present Mike, Todoroki, and two other kids are shouting at the paramedics. Shudo's accounted for. What about Aizawa? Where is he? Knowing that a-hole, he went and got himself killed for these dumbass kids. It would take more than one hand for Dabi to count how many times Aizawa nearly died for him when he was an idiot 15-year-old. Finally, Dabi spots him. The camera gets closer, revealing the man in the ambulance, Aizawa. He's more blood than person. Dabi chokes on air. No. The camera starts to pick up everyone's individual shouts. Present Mix is the loudest, unsurprisingly, but Shudo looks just about ready to climb up into the ambulance. Finally, he yells, "Let me in, I'm his soulmate." Of course he is. Through the fog in his brain, Dabi is sure that's going to cause some problems for him later. Finally, Shudo and Mike force themselves into the ambulance and the two other kids, a green-haired boy and a blonde boy, retreat, just as Midnight comes into view and blocks the camera. Midnight and the reporter have a short argument, and the TV switches to another breaking story. Tuya? Tia, is that you? Shudo's throat goes dry as Aizawa, lying in a hospital bed, grabs blindly at Shudo's face. He's entirely covered in bandages and so can give no sign of his emotions, but Shudo can feel them in his newly activated mark. No, he whispers. No, it's Shudo. Your student. The nurses had told him Aizawa would be delirious when he first woke. If he woke at all, that is. Where's your brother? Aizawa gasps. Shudo swallows. That had always been unspoken between the two of them, their shared history with Tuya. Shudo knows Aizawa was once his teacher. Tuya loved to talk about him, but bringing it up was just too hard for him. Probably too hard for Aizawa to... I don't know, sir. He grabs Aizawa's hands and pulls them off his face gently. He's still alive, I know he is, and you know it, Shudo. A nervous laugh escapes Shudo's lips. He's not. What are you talking about, Mr. Aizawa? I'm going to call the nurses now. You need to go back to sleep. Shudo presses the call button against Aizawa's protests. Shudo! Shudo curled into himself tighter, struggling to hold back the body-shaking sobs. There was another knock at his door. Shudo? Are you all right? Shudo wanted his teddy bear, but father burned it the day before, after his marks came in. He hated it when father was angry, which was most of the time. Tuya said Shudo shouldn't hate so much, but he thinks his big brother just meant he didn't want Shudo to be as hateful as him. Tuya always hated so many things, except his siblings and his mother. He was always so angry, his eyes always burning as blue as his flames. I'm coming in, Shudo. There was Tuya, crouched next to him with a hand on his back and soothing whispers coming out of his mouth. Hey Sho, what's wrong? He asked, even though he knew exactly what's wrong, he had been there when it happened. When father had screamed bloody murder, and it had sent Natsuo out of the house with a slammed door behind him, and Fuyumi begging for them to stop as she sobbed, and Tuya throwing himself in front of Shudo, a barrier for the pathetic boy crumpled on the ground. Shudo kept crying. Tuya held him. If it makes you feel any better, Tuya said, you know I'm not his soulmate either? I got a teacher at my school over my own dad. He's constantly said about it. I didn't want to be his soulmate anyway, Shudo said, and he was telling the truth. Father was always so angry, and he didn't want to be angry too. Tuya laughed, and it sounded fake, but he held Shudo tighter. That would probably SCK. He kissed the top of his head. It's you and me, Shudo, okay? No matter what, we're sticking together. Okay, Shudo said, you and me. Sticking together. Later, Tuya left, and Shudo never told father that one of the marks on his back was for the disgraced son. Are you sure you want to do this? Your brother might be there. Dabi pops a pill, not an illegal one, mind you, but the one he bought illegally in order to stave off the sickness that comes with leaving a soulmate. Then, he takes a deep breath and says, he guessed so. Kigo sighs. Alright, he says and points to a bench. I'll be waiting right here, love. Dabi enters the hospital. The woman at the front desk eyes his scars and his sulk warily but gives him Aizawa's room number the second he pulls out his hero card, and lets Dabi go on his merry way. Aizawa's room is in sight when the door opens and a head of red and white hair walks out. Dabi ducks around the corner and prays to God Shudo isn't heading that way. Shudo walks by, and Dabi catches a glimpse of his face, in person, not on the TV, not in a picture, for the first time in years. It is bruised and tear-stained, it is solemn, and it is hopeful. His wrists have bright red handprints on them, newly formed, and they disappear as Shudo shoves his hands into his pockets. Dabi wants nothing more than to reach out to him. Shudo pauses in the hallway, just past Dabi. Dabi's hand stretches out, his mouth opens, the words are right there on the tip of his tongue. Hey, Shudo, long time no see, and he turns. He turns on his heel and runs down the hallway, around several more corners and into the bathroom. That was close. Way too close. It wouldn't just be his life at stake. Shudo. If Dabi talked with Shudo, and Endeavor found out, then Endeavor would know that Shudo knew about Dabi's whole being alive thing. He would know that they share a mark, and he would know that Shudo spoke with him without letting Endeavor know. Endeavor can't think there's any sort of threat on his livelihood, on his reputation. Not when it involves Shudo's well-being. Not to mention, Dabi is not a popular hero. He has a lot of enemies, and that means a lot of people who could try to use Shudo against him. After what seems like long enough for Shudo leave the hospital, and was probably way too long, really, and Kigo's definitely worried now, Dabi makes his way back to Aizawa's room. His teacher is unconscious, covered in bandages. It looks like a bad mummy costume. All Dabi can see is the vague outline of his body and his hair, sticking out of the top. Hey, Dabi whispers, standing in the threshold. Mike looks back at him. He's holding Aizawa's hand. Hey, he says, quiet for once in his life. Dabi settles next to him. Is he going to be okay? Mike nods, bringing Aizawa's hand up to his lips. Most likely, the nurses say. Dabi hums. He's always okay. When are you coming over for dinner again? Mike says. Thank God. Dabi needed a subject change. Dabi shrugs. I don't know, whenever we have time. Between you, Kigo, and Aizawa's FED schedules, it's hard. You know that. Yeah, Mike says, and then he is sobbing. Dabi stays quiet and keeps his eyes on Aizawa. Thank you for inviting me over, Tuya said suddenly, and for dinner. Mike laughed as though that was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Of course, kid. Because of Aizawa and Mike, Tuya managed to get out of spending winter break at the Todoroki household. He just had to go back for Christmas, drop off his gifts and eat dinner, then he got to leave. Endeavor wasn't there anyway, so it wasn't a huge deal. Tuya just got to hang out with his mom and his siblings, which is perfectly fine by him. Shudo was dressed up as Santa. Tuya was going to miss him. He was going to miss Fuyumi and Natsuo too. And Kigo. He only met Kigo a few months before, and he'd been so excited when he'd realized they were soulmates, but Kigo was going down a different path. He was going to be a top hero, Tuya knew that for sure, and Dabi couldn't be next to him when he did. It was too dangerous. Too close to the spotlight. He would get to see Aizawa, at least, as an underground hero. Just a little while longer until he graduated from UA, and he could leave. Until then, movie night with Aizawa and Mike didn't sound all that bad. The heart monitor's beeping picks up only moments before Aizawa starts to speak. It comes out hoarse and shrill, muffled through the bandages. Tuya, he rasps. Dabi winces. It's been a while since he heard anyone say that name. Dabi, he reminds, taking Aizawa's hand from Mike. I'm here, Aizawa. Your brother was looking for you, Aizawa says. He pulls Dabi's hand, and by extension his whole hand, as close as he can. He's sick. He's sick, I can feel it. The nurses said he would be delirious, Mike whispers. I know he is, Aizawa, Dabi says. I can't stop it. Aizawa manages to give him that all too familiar exasperated fond worried look even through the bandages. Yes you can, Aizawa says. Dabi swallows. Mike watches on, silent and clearly tense. Neither has any idea what to say. Luckily, they don't need to. Where are Izuku and Katsuki? Aizawa asks. Dabi has no idea who those people are. Izuku isn't sure where he is. Maybe. Kaken is here, sat at Izuku's desk with his head down. Izuku is in bed. It's still sort of dark. Izuku glances to his bedside table. The bright green glowing numbers read 5. That's Mom's voice outside the door hushed. Hisashi, I know, but I just don't think it's the right time. Please, you have to understand what he's just been through, and your coming back might just stress him out more. No. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply that. No, dear. I'm sure it will be great. I can't wait to see you. I'll make soba, okay? Goodbye. Dad's coming home. Kaken groans, and his head lifts up slowly. You awake, nerd? Yeah, Izuku whispers. He lays there on his back, staring up at the dark ceiling, the slowly spinning fan. What happened? Villains. Oh, right. There's silence again, for a while. It comes back to Izuku in bits and pieces, villains arriving at the USJ, getting scattered across the facility, Aizawa's face slamming into the concrete, Toshinori's secret almost getting revealed. We need to go visit Aizawa, Izuku says, finally piercing through the silence. Kaken groans. I have to go home first. Auntie called Ma and got her to let me stay here for a while, but I can't stay for too long. Okay, Izuku whispers, and he doesn't cry until Kaken leaves. I'm home. Katsuki calls, after he turns down the volume on his hearing aids. It's early, 6 in the morning to be exact, but his parents are always awake by now. He's usually awake before that, so that he can get out of the house before they're up and about. Mom comes bustling out of the kitchen with Dad in tow. The smell of bacon permeates the house. Oh, Katsuki, she breathes, sounding worried for once in her life, and Katsuki stands there stiffly as she wraps her arms around him. Dad's hug, though, is returned. Mom grabs him by the shoulders. What the hell happened, Katsuki? Villains, 2 goddamn weeks into your first year? Was the villain's fault, not mine, Katsuki grumbles. Mom grabs him by the arm and tugs him into the kitchen. He's pushed down into a chair and a plate of food is shoved in front of him. He picks at the bacon but doesn't eat any. You are staying right here for the rest of the day, Mom says. Per usual, Dad nods along. Katsuki scoffs. My teacher was hospitalized. I have to go visit him. It's his fault you were attacked. Mom shouts. Katsuki goes still. Dad looks pained, but when does he not? HR pulls out a chair and takes a seat. The legs screech against the floor, loud in the ensuing silence. Mom stays standing above them, a pancake batter-spotted spatula still in hand. Finally, Katsuki hisses, What? You heard me, Mom says, and her tone leaves no room for argument. This is the Bakuga household, though Katsuki always finds room to argue with Mom, and Mom always finds room to argue with Katsuki. It's his fault. It's that entire DMN school's fault. I can't let you go back there. Like hell you can't. Katsuki slams his smoking palms on the table, ignoring the way Dad flinches at the damage. Where the F else do you want me to go? Somewhere that doesn't put your life in danger. Mom swings her spatula, and pancake batter goes flying, splattering across the wall clock. They don't put my life in danger. It was an attack on the school, the same shit could happen anywhere else. UA has the best security in the FNG country. Katsuki stands, and he is already halfway through the door by the time Mom finishes saying, "Where are you going?" "To visit Aizawa," Katsuki says. Mom is behind him quickly, grabbing at the back of his shirt. "Bakugo Katsuki, you stay right here." He stops. He turns, looks her right in the eyes and says, "Go to hell." His cheek stings and he knows that will leave a mark. It always does. "I don't want you back in my house at all this weekend," she snarls, and he lets the door slam behind him. Katsuki doesn't really give a shit, so he starts on his way to the hospital. Deku comes running out his front door the second Katsuki passes his house. He joins him in silence, and Katsuki is glad. He's not entirely sure he's capable of an intelligent conversation right now. It's not until they're on the train, surrounded by the chatter and busyness of Mizurufu's day-to-day, that Deku speaks. "We should stop and get Aizawa flowers." Katsuki grunts in response. "I mean, he's going to be okay, right?" Katsuki taps Deku's back over the marks. "Listen to what the marks say. He's probably unconscious, so they aren't saying much. But he's not dead. He's going to be okay." Deku. It sounds sort of sad and fake, but Katsuki cherishes the sound nonetheless. "For once, you're the optimist." Katsuki rolls his eyes. "Whatever." There's still dried blood on Deku's cheek. He's holding his arm awkwardly, not like it's broken, but it must hurt. Katsuki is sure he doesn't look much better himself. People are staring at them, but it only takes a glare from Katsuki to make them mind their own business. Katsuki keeps his hand on Deku's back, and doesn't say a word about it when Deku leans closer. The hospital is white and bright and cold when they enter, bouquets in hand. The waiting room is filled with students. They're greeted by nearly their entire class, half of which stand the second they spot the pair. Aijuru is first to get close to them, and Katsuki lets him wrap him in a hug. He catches the sound of Uraraka rambling nervously, and is almost surprised to, for once, hear nothing back from Deku. "You feeling all right, man?" Aijuru asks, keeping his hands on Katsuki's upper arms. Katsuki shrugs. Over Aijuru's shoulder, Ashido hovers nervously, and Yaoyorozu is taking roll, maybe? Was there some sort of agreement to meet here that Katsuki missed? Well, at least Katsuki managed to show up. It seems a few people haven't gotten here yet, and Yaoyorozu is practically melting in worry. Katsuki pats Aijuru's bicep. "I'm gonna go visit Aizawa," he says, detaching. "They're only letting soulmates and family in." "I know," Katsuki says, and he and Deku make their way to the front desk. Getting the room number is surprisingly easy, but Katsuki thinks at this point she's just tired of teenagers begging her for it and has given up on stopping them. Deku holds his hand as they walk to the room. The first thing Katsuki sees is bandages. The next is present Mike. His hair is down. There's a man with a hood on sat next to him, and he goes tense the second they enter. Mike smiles when he sees him, but it looks more like a grimace. "Midoriya. Bakugo." Katsuki says nothing and flops down in a chair on the other side of the bed. Izuku stands in the threshold, that familiar nervous Izuku look on his face. "Izuku!" Aizawa rasps, and both boys startle. "Katsuki?" They both say, "Hey," but Katsuki's is more of an animalistic noise and Izuku's is something like a squeak. "Good, you're okay?" "Good." Katsuki is thinking the same thing about Aizawa. "You're the one wrapped in bandages," Izuku says. Aizawa does something that looks like a shrug, but he's basically a pile of cloth at this point, so it's hard to tell. "It's my job to keep you safe, is the difference," Aizawa mumbles, and it sounds like he's about to pass out. While they talk, Katsuki lets his gaze slide over to the stranger. Gnarly scars and piercing turquoise eyes, like something out of a story. Who are you? A friend, the man says. In fact, I ought to be going. Aizawa lurches. Wait to dash. Mike laughs extremely loudly and extremely fakely at something Izuku has said, and the man leaves. Who was that, Mike? Katsuki asks. A friend, Mike parrots. Let's leave it at that for now. Aizawa is silent. Thank God he's finally asleep again, Mike says. Izuku and Katsuki stay quiet. Izuku settles on the floor against the bed, Katsuki curls up in his chair, and Mike keeps a tight hold on Aizawa's hand. Katsuki thinks maybe he's checking for a pulse. Hitoshi is running the second he gets the news. Hell, he's sprinting down the street as fast as he can to the station, and then he is jamming his card into the reader and he is sprinting onto the train, and when the train doors open he is sprinting out of those too. He doesn't sprint the rest of the way. He doesn't have the stamina. But the second he spots Denki's house he breaks out into another run, and then throws the door open without knocking. Denki already said he could come over, anyway. No big deal. Denki is curled on the couch, two women on either side of him who Hitoshi assumes must be his mothers. He's got a cup of hot chocolate in his hands. There's no steam rising out of it, and the pasta on the plate on the table in front of him is all stuck together. "Don't have to eat," one of his parents, the blonde one, is saying as Hitoshi walks in. Denki shakes his head. Denki, Hitoshi breathes and Denki startles, almost spilling his hot chocolate. Denki's mom stand. The blonde one takes his hand eagerly, and she shakes it a bit too enthusiastically. "Oh, you must be Hitoshi. You can call me Runa, and this is my wife, Kama." Kama nods at him. Her hair is short and black, and her eyes are honey yellow like Denki's. Runa has Denki's smile. His eyebrows too and his nose. Hitoshi," he says. "But I guess you knew that." Runa's smile turns sad as she looks back at Denki. "Do you think you could get through to him?" Hitoshi shrugs helplessly. He really had no plan in coming here. All he knew is that he had to see Denki. I can try?" "Okay." Runa hugs him, and Hitoshi goes stiff. Hugs aren't something he's particularly used to. Kama follows behind as she walks away. She pats him on the shoulder, and lets it linger before she walks away. Hitoshi stands there in the middle of the living room helplessly, floundering for words that could provide even a drop of comfort. Surprisingly, Denki speaks first. "Hey, Toshi." "Hey." Hitoshi sits down next to him primly, carefully keeping from touching him. He has no idea exactly what Denki just went through, or what could set him off. "How are you feeling?" Hitoshi asks, which is maybe the most idiotic thing to say in this situation. Denki laughs. "Kinda shitty." He leans over and puts his head right on Hitoshi's shoulder. Hitoshi stays tense. "Yeah, that's what I thought," Hitoshi says. He remembers the shock of emotions that hit him through his mark earlier today, and now, the startling contrast of practically nothing from Denki's side. "What do you need me to do?" "Just," Denki leans even closer, wrapping his arms around Hitoshi's painfully stiff form, curling up to him like a cat. "Just let me do this. At least until we have to go to the hospital." "The hospital?" "For my teacher. The class is meeting up there in a couple hours." Hitoshi very carefully places a hand on Denki's back, which is about the most affection he can handle. "Okay," he whispers, "but only if you eat something?" Denki grumbles unhappily but grabs his mug. "I'm not eating the pasta." As if psychic, Kama appears, a sleeve of saltines in hand. Clearly, she's been eavesdropping. She places them in Denki's hand, and leaves with nothing more than a quiet nod and a soft smile Hitoshi's way. "Todoroki Tuya is dead. He died a long time ago. Todoroki Tuya is dead, and in his place stands the cremation hero, Dabi. Todoroki Tuya is dead, and he left so many people. He left Todoroki Rei only days after she was hospitalized, and now every day she believes it was her fault. He left Todoroki Natsuo without someone to argue with. He left Todoroki Fuyumi without someone to cook with. He left Todoroki Shudo without a soulmate. He left Aizawa Shoyuta, a sarcastic and introverted yet dedicated and truly kind student replaced with a bitter and pessimistic underground hero. Todoroki Tuya is dead, and Takami Kigo never really got to know him. He's never going to come back either. But Kigo thinks that who lost Todoroki Tuya deserve to have Dabi. Tuya and Kigo met in the summer after their 3rd year. Graduation was a blur of hats in the air and mind-numbing parties, and then Kigo was a hero. A real, bona fide hero, without the title of student weighing him down. It was so much work. Which was to be expected. He wasn't complaining, really, but no matter how much he loved keeping people safe, he hated that he had to. He hated that being a hero was so much work, because it meant there were villains out there working just as hard. Kigo, on one of his very rare off days, was walking through the park and dutifully ignoring anything that could possibly lead him to having to work today. No alleyways, no sketchy buildings, no shady characters. Just him, his headphones, and the sunlight on his face. Then he walked by the bench. There was a boy sitting there. He was hunched over a notebook, scribbling furiously. Kigo couldn't see his face, but he could see the spots of blood on his hands and shirt, and he figured that was enough reason to bother him. Avoiding anything that could lead him to having to work, his butt. He couldn't just ignore a blood-stained boy. He was skinny and small. He was probably 14, 15? Too young to be sitting on a bench and splattered with blood. Kigo leaned over in front of the boy, trying to catch a glimpse of what he was writing, but it all looked like gibberish. No, not gibberish, English. Kigo barely passed that class, truthfully. "Hey there," he chirped, and the boy's hand lit up. It really did. It lit up with bright blue fire, swinging in an arc in front of him. Kigo barely managed to stumble back and away from it. "Whoa, dude, I'm just saying hi." The boy lifted his head, revealing eyes burning with barely contained fear and a twisted snarl. "Leave me alone." Kigo raised his hands, hoping to placate the boy. "I'm a hero, Hawks. You can call me Takami. Are you all right?" "Look a little young to be a hero," the boy said. He held his notebook close to his chest. Kigo laughed lightly. "Well, I just graduated a couple months ago." The boy's eyes slid up, finally, to meet his eyes. No, not his eyes, his forehead. That was fine. "Where did you go to school?" he asked. "Shiketsu," Kigo responded. The boy tilted his head. "That's why I've never seen you then. I was at UA." Kigo had to reassess this entire situation. "Wait, how old are you?" 18. "I thought you were like 13, Kigo said, wheezing. The boy growled like an animal. "You a hero?" "Yeah," the boy said, pulling out a card. The legal name on it had been struck through with a sharp I, leaving only the cremation hero, Dabi. Kigo figured it was best not to ask questions about the legal name. Kigo flopped down on the other end of the bench, leaving a buffer seat between them. "Cremation isn't very heroic," he said. Dabi shrugged. "Doesn't matter. I'm an underground hero, anyway." He eyed Kigo's big, far too conspicuous wings. "Doubt you are, though." "I'm just gonna take the ranking as it comes," Kigo said. "I'm gonna laugh when you end up in the top 10. He shuddered at the possibility. "You know, Takami," Dabi said, lips curling upwards, "it's my day off. Do you want to go grab something to eat? If you tell me about the blood." Something flashed across Dabi's face. When he said, "hero work," it rang in Kigo's mind as a lie, but he took it anyway. "Well, then, what do you think about getting chicken?" It's not until months later that Kigo finds out he met Dabi only hours after he left Endeavor's household for good. Kigo grabs his phone. Hopefully Aizawa will give him Todoroki Shudo's number.